Well, so we yeah, that's right.
Sorry.
You're fine.
No, he'll ask you about yours. That was one. So don't go. But you're in that.
Right, right.
They ask you. Yeah. How are you, Henry? Good to see you too. Well, Mike, how's your family doing? Oh, good.
You're coming as your secretary. You got your seat. He needs to be sitting here. Right?
I never noticed.
Anyway. Hey. How are you?
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay, we're going to get started. My name is Kathleen Alder. I'm the chair of the Planning Commission. And we'll go ahead and get started. We have on the stand, we have Joe Chambers and got to get all the equipment on. Okay, we've got Tyler. Michael Fortune, Robert Perry, and Brian Marble. We'd like to have a pledge of allegiance. I've asked Robert Perry if he would do that. So if you'd all please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming. We love to see people in our meeting. We have on here an agenda item, the approval of minutes, but we are going to suspend that until our next commission meeting. We are now at a point where we ask for public comment. We ask for citizens to express their views of things that are within the Planning Commission's purview. And so we also let people email and text if they have any comments. So at this point, I will open the public comment part of our meeting. And if you are commenting on something that's already on the agenda, if you would wait until that point in time. We have a paper here for you to sign if you want to comment. If you're not on this paper and you want to comment, you should get on it because this is what I'm going to call off of. Okay. Scarlett, do we have anything?
I'm checking.
Yes.
How do you write on paper?
Yep, it's right here if you'd like to.
You have to come up front and center. Sorry. You might need a pen. Yes.
While we're waiting, can you explain why we're not reading the minutes of the previous meeting?
We have 3 sets of minutes to go through, and as we were going through them, there were some things on there. There were just a lot of things that needed to be changed, not changed, but we don't do word for word minutes. We just do ideas, comments, and decisions that were made. And so we opted not to bring those this meeting. If you're interested in information about previous meetings, you're certainly welcome to go to the website and listen to it. There's also a YouTube video for every single meeting. So I'm sorry, it's just simply because there were too many things that we wanted to change on it. So just to clarify. Okay. Okay, is this under the public comment?
I think it's not really fully related, so I'll go ahead and mention it now. My name is Ashley Nance. I live in Providence. So I'm here. It's sort of about the rezone, but it's not about the actual changing. It's more about planning of the road in front of that area. I live up on Grandview, and the current amount of traffic we get there, the road's fine. But if you're going to increase the traffic substantially, which it would get a lot of more traffic, it would be really nice to widen the road at least, and maybe even add a sidewalk. So just something, I don't know if it's already on.
We'll cover it.
What is that? Is that
Give us a chance?
Okay. And then also in the park master plan, under that utility easement, it talks about a park. Is this the time to address that, or should I wait until?
Just hang on. Okay. Thanks. We won't leave you out, I promise. And if you don't get your question answered, you can certainly ask. Okay.
Charlotte had to go check her system.
Well, Scarlett she has to check her system. I apologize for the delay, but we can only do that at the last minute because some people send their comments at the last minute. So there's nothing on any social media or anything.
No, we would only take it through email, text. So if it comes on a social media post, we wouldn't do those.
I
So
used the wrong term. I'm sorry. My mistake.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and close that portion of the meeting, and we are having a public hearing tonight for 2 items. The first item is PCC 10-8-3, number 8, retaining wall code amendment request. The planning commission will take comments and questions regarding the application filed by Brent and Ida Ward to amend PCC 10-8-3, number 8, retaining walls, which is a request to allow additional height if adjacent property owners agree in writing to allow the use. So I will, does it say on my paper? Where is it?
Brian,
Ryan, you've got the paper. Ryan, you have the list.
people that wanted to speak.
Sorry, I thought you were hiding it over there in your paperwork. Okay, so do we have anyone here? Okay, Scarlett, would you like to explain? Well, should I have you do that in the next?
It's totally up to you.
Okay, we'll just take public comments now, and no one here to speak for that. Okay.
You raise your hand.
Can we get a description of the situation or the history and background before?
If you go to the Providence City site, and all of you can do this on your phone, unless you have a flip phone, and you can pull up the agenda and then click on the attachments, and that will give you all the information.
All the research that the staff has done. Start from.
Okay. Not having anybody to say anything. And our agendas are always this way. You can always get them on our website under the Planning Commission. And then if you click on the current meeting, it'll have the agenda and everything.
On this particular one for the public hearings, they need to actually scroll down to get the exhibit.
Oh, that's true.
If they
You can
scroll
go to
down to item number 3, then they can see the code review on the retaining wall. And if they scroll down to item number 4, they can see the information on the rezone for the one up on the Highlands area, and then the information for the rezone over on the north side is number 5, the information under item number 5.
So the blue part, click on that, and it'll take you right to the attachments. Okay, not having any comments, we'll close that public hearing. We'll go to public hearing number 2. Rezone of parcel 02-116-0004 and 03-036-0027. The Planning Commission will take comments and questions regarding the request from Terex Engineering and Construction to rezone parcels 02-116-004 and 03-036-0027 from single family large to single family traditional. I'll call your names off the list. Just be aware that you'll have about 3 minutes to give us your comments. And once we're done with that portion of it, while the commission is discussing it, you will not have an opportunity to stand up and make further comments. Okay. So, Chris Bassett.
Yeah.
State your name, please.
My name is Chris Bassett. My question was just, I was trying to find an exact definition of what these different zoning changes were, and just trying to find out some more information on what exactly that means. And
The rezone.
yeah, the changing from this zone designation to this.
Okay.
So that's, and I was just trying to find that on my phone as you said where to find it.
Okay. single family large is 2.13 homes per acre. And single family traditional is 3.75. So it's not a whole lot of difference, but it's about a third more.
Okay.
Okay. So 2.13 versus 3.75.
3 point what?
3.75.
That's what my question was. Thank you.
Okay. Good question. Corey Crompton? Okay. Kellen Cutler? And is that what you don't want to comment, or that's for the something else? Okay. Andrea? Okay.
Andrea Diamond, just because I know there are voices that aren't here in defense of the general plan and the traffic load and the previous considerations of 1,000 south in other rezone requests, I just want to put a plug in for be cautious about approving a rezone change. As I said, on behalf of a lot of neighbors that I know that aren't here in the history of this discussion. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks. Ashley Nance?
So, I just wanted to come and, oh,
You need your
my name's Ashley, Nance, I remembered. Right. I just wanted to come and mostly I wanted to see discussed the road, Grandview, and also 1,000 South. I think that's a good point. Since the last time we had this discussion, a lot of housing has been added along that street, and there's cars that park on both sides of the street. And then so it can be interesting driving through there sometimes when there's two cars coming. So, and I realize that's a consideration for a road, but I do think Grandview needs to be widened. And I think a lot of us would be really interested to hear about the plans for a potential park under the utility easement. I've not been around for those conversations, and I don't think many of us have. And so that's something that I'd like to hear you guys discuss and hear more about. And those are my only comments. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Stephen Wood? I'm sorry, you signed the wrong sheet?
Yes, I put it on there in support of planning and zoning. I'm the engineer over your water master plan, so I put my foot on the sheet. I wasn't sure
Okay.
about the sheet, you know.
Well, we're glad you're here. Now everybody knows who you are. Okay, great. Are you here for a comment? Okay, okay. Yes. You can drag one of these chairs over if you don't find a place to sit. Okay, so that's the end of our comment period. I'll go ahead and close item number 2. So,
I signed the sheet with my name on it.
you did?
Both the attendance and the comment was there. Scott Finley.
I just can't read tonight. I'm sorry.
You're okay.
Scott, it's your turn.
Scott Finley. I live on Grandview Drive in Providence. Just a few questions. Switching from single family large, which is roughly half-acre lots, down to single family traditional, which is approximately quarter-acre lots, but double the density. It's not out of character for part of the surrounding area, which is phase 1 of the Highlands where I currently live. I do have some concerns about the transportation load, though, and so I specifically am very curious to know what plans are for an egress or ingress, a second one into that upper phase. As I see it, there's only one right now, but it would be helpful to understand. Maybe have the developer, Mr. Jensen, address that, if he'd be willing to, about what plans are for an egress or ingress, and whether it can be approved or not with only one in there, going to the type of density that's being requested. It's not high density like what was proposed a few years ago, which in my mind was a far stretch. This is only doubling the density keeping it single family. So I don't have super large concerns on that side, but most of my concerns range with transportation and 1,000 South bottlenecks in several places. It is very difficult to have, if you have a car parked on either side of the road, it's almost nearly impossible to have two cars pass each other without avoiding almost a head-on. And then the whole part of Grandview, which I think Ashley and Nance addressed, has some problems. There's also 2 blind spots in those areas. So maybe we could hear some answers about plans by either the city or the developer to address those issues, and particularly the ingress egress. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I left you out. Okay, did I miss anyone else? Okay. We'll go ahead and close that portion of the meeting, the rezone. We'll move to item number 3 now, the code amendment. Planning Commission will review, discuss, and make a recommendation to City Council regarding the request to amend PCC 10-8-3 retaining walls. So I will open that up to Scarlett to give us information on it, and then we'll have a discussion.
My battery is doing strange things, so I'm actually tethered to the wall. So if it's all right, I will give my report from here. Am I gonna mess up here?
No, I'm just looking to hear the charger.
Well, I got it charging. I can only stay, I can't get that far. I can do it. If it's okay, I can just do it right here. No, I'm good, thanks. So the applicants are building a home on Grandview, and they want to have a side entry garage. In order to accommodate that, they feel like they need a driveway width of 30 feet. And the builder is here, Dave Belknap is here, so you can ask him technical questions on that. In order to do that, they will, because of the slope of the existing slope of the land, they would need to put in a retaining wall that would range from approximately 3 feet to 10 feet at the tallest point on the west end. In fact, it might even taper down to less than 3. They've provided the following statement. Right now, our code does not allow for a retaining wall of that height in the setback. You can have a retaining wall in the setback if it's 3 feet or less. It's exempt from the setback requirements. If the retaining wall is between 3 to 6 feet, you can have it in the setback if the exposed side faces the property owner's property, not the neighbor's. In this case, the wall would exceed the 6 feet, and the exposed side would also be facing the neighbor's property. That's why they're here, is because they just can't make it fit under our existing code. So they're proposing an amendment in our retaining wall code. They're proposing to add an additional line item to letter D to read: the exposed side of the retaining wall may exceed 6 feet in height if adjacent property owners are in agreement to height in written statement to Providence City. Retaining wall must comply with building engineering codes. This amendment would, and this part is just explanation, it's not part of the code. This amendment would allow property owners with steeper elevation changes to utilize as much of their property as possible where needed. Retaining walls that can be placed close to or on the property lines allow adjacent property owners to know where the property boundaries are located. And then they're thanking you for considering their request and allowing them to work with us. In the staff report, it talks about the retaining wall. It says the applicant is suggesting that a written agreement between property owners and the adjacent property owner filed with the city would allow the retaining wall to exceed the standards in city code. In talking about this, the staff had a couple of concerns. This allows two property owners to establish limits that may not be within the best interest of the area. This may put neighbor against neighbor. The proposed setback was discussed. Required setbacks describe areas on lots where no buildings, structures, or additions to them may be located, and which hereby become yard areas. The design of the driveway provides easy access into the rear yard. The driveway could be placed in this exact location in the rear yard if it was built on the natural grade. The driveway in the setback can still act as a yard. So if the driveway, it's not a matter of the driveway being a problem. If the driveway was flat without having to have the ground raised, then we wouldn't be having this discussion, because a flat concrete ground level over the top of a public utility easement is not a problem. We can deal with that. It's when we start to get structures in those setbacks and the utility easements that the problems occur. Then it talks about this, the staff report goes through the state code, tells us that the legislative power is exercised by ordinance, and the governing body may pass any ordinance to regulate, require, prohibit, govern, control, or supervise any activity, business, conduct of condition authorized by this act or any other purpose of law. It says that the municipality can enact all ordinances, resolutions, rules, and may enter into other forms of land use controls and development agreements. And I'm not going to read the whole state code. You can certainly go through that. Only a legislative body, as the body authorized to weigh policy considerations, may enact a land use regulation. So tonight, even if the planning commission thinks this is the best idea in the world, they can make a recommendation to city council to approve the code amendment, but you cannot actually approve the code amendment. Only the elected officials can do that for us. The planning commission shall review and make recommendation to the legislative bodies. And you had to provide notice, hold the public hearing, and review the recommended proposal, which you're doing tonight. So we're following state code like we need to. The only conditions that staff has on this is before making a recommendation to the legislative body on an amendment to an existing land use regulation is that you held the public hearing and that we continue to meet all applicable city, state, and federal laws, codes, and rules. And then there is a map provided in here. You can see the red line. So this wall won't actually sit on the property line, but it will be 7 feet into the setback line. The side yard setback is 10 feet. This wall will be 7 feet into it. There will be 3 feet from the exposed side of the wall to the property line. In order to help with aesthetics, the applicant actually is proposing a shorter retaining wall that could be a planter box that would help so that it wasn't just a big concrete retaining wall that the neighbor would be looking at. But so that's what that other little secondary wall is for, is to be able to be a planter box to be used to help with aesthetics of the retaining wall. From a staff perspective, staff understands that codes need to be reevaluated during the course. I mean, building practices change, people's needs and uses change. So staff is not opposed to changing the city code. It's just that staff is concerned that this be done with an agreement between neighbors. Rather than doing something like that, staff feels like it would be better to evaluate the need for the setback, the reasons for the setback, and what we will allow in that area. And if we feel like having a retaining wall, such as described, would be just fine. If we feel like there that's something that would be of benefit to the overall city, then we just need to change the code to allow that to happen without it having to be between neighbors, so that people could take advantage of that code equally throughout the city and not have to have it be an agreement. So that's what I have.
Okay.
Do you have questions for me before I sit down? You're not asking me questions.
Sorry.
Yeah.
In our code, is there a way that we could go to that? We talked a little bit briefly about 10.1 and 10.8. What is the definitions for structure, the height, and so forth like that? Because it talks about if it's over that, if it's over a certain height, that's not accepted in the code. Then if it's attached to the house, it becomes a part of the structure. So can we pull those up that we could see them?
What you want pulled up?
The city code 10,
City Code 10.1
10.1.
and 10.8 are the two. Well, and maybe before we get into that, didn't we say that the builder was here?
Yes.
Does he have any comments he wants to make about it? Or want to come up? I had some questions.
I thought Aaron was here. I apologize. I guess he's not in the room.
And the owners are not here, the ones who are petitioning for this change.
Actually, I don't know if I've met Brett and Idina too.
I've met them.
Thank you. Well, before we go to the code, since they're not here to represent it, I'm wondering if there's something we should table. Part of it to me is the footings were already poured. Is that not correct?
Yes,
The wall is actually in.
The wall is there as well. And it's not a 3 foot, I don't even know if the lowest end gets a 3 foot. It was well over 10 feet about the middle.
Yeah.
It's also attached to the house. The concrete structures are attached to the foundation of the home. So by our code, it is part of the structure. So I don't think it was even legally done.
it may be part of the structure. It appears that it is, but we would need to get the building official. And I did talk to him earlier today, but he didn't have the plan, so he didn't give me a definitive answer. He did seem to think that it may not be considered part of the main structure, but he did not give me a definitive answer. So
it doesn't also, I think, if I understood you correct, that it sits 7 feet in from the property line.
it's 3 feet in from the property line. It's 7
feet.
feet into the, so you've got 10 feet from the south neighbor's
Right.
property to the
Into the
Yeah.
setback.
that's the setback. And
So the
this,
7 feet is into the setback.
yeah, and
Right.
then this wall is 3 feet off the property
Off the
line, so
line.
it's 7 feet
Yeah.
into the setback.
I went and took pictures of it, so it is, the footings are maybe 6 inches off the property line and so forth, but so there is probably the 3 feet to the wall, but that's already up and in and so forth. So I just wonder if we should table it if they're not here.
We also have precedent that when people are asking for a code amendment, that unless they're here to talk about it, we've tabled it.
I do have a question when you're through this.
Of me or?
Well, just past practices of what the city's done.
You have to speak into it.
So, thank you. If the neighbor, which I understand is on the north or the south,
South.
if the neighbor on the south granted a 10-foot easement across his property, how would the city treat that? I'm just curious.
I don't, well, right now we wouldn't because the code doesn't allow it to be anywhere in a setback. So the neighbor couldn't have it in their setback necessarily either at 10 feet. So right now, there isn't really a remedy within the code because of the height. But if it was something that fit the code and the problem was the exposed wall, then there may be something that two neighbors could get together and work out with an easement. But the problem is more than just the location of the wall. It's also the height of the wall in that location.
Also, if they granted an easement, wouldn't that hurt their setback for the neighbors who would be granting an easement?
I haven't seen it do it in other cities that I've lived in.
So it wouldn't hurt their chances of an easement,
It
of
wouldn't affect
their setback,
Yeah.
because that easement would go into their setback.
I'm not trying to solve the problem, I'm just
Yeah.
asking.
We actually have not had anyone pose that to us. We have had people that have done joint walls where the board is on each side of the property, and they've been joint applicants and joint walls, but we haven't had anyone come and actually propose putting the neighbor's wall on their property. So we don't have, to my knowledge, we haven't dealt with that in Providence.
Let me just make sure I understand. The current ordinance says that if it's a 3-foot wall, no problem. If it's larger than 3 feet and the wall is facing the owner, it's okay.
The exposed side facing the owner, yes. Up to 6 feet.
And anything else above 6 is not allowed, period.
Right. Within the setback. That's not to say they can't have it located outside of the setback on their property.
I
But-
appreciate you saying that, but I understood that.
Okay.
But maybe the other people in the audience.
What Michael says is true about it being tied to the structure. Outside of our code, so they're supposed to be tied to the structure, should be kind of on the property line.
Well, and the other aspect is that the wall itself exceeds the 6 feet, but the fill is to the house, not the exposed is to the neighbors. So that's the other issue that our code says that it can't be.
Right, but I think really what, and I appreciate the discussion, and these are all things that you need to consider, but the request really is, do you feel comfortable with the request that the code be amended? Not should we amend the code, perhaps we should amend the code, but do you feel comfortable that the code be amended that two neighbors could get together and make that decision? That's what the applicant's
That's the
request
change
is.
they're proposing,
Yes,
not for us to solve their problem with their wall.
that's how they feel like they could probably solve their problem with their wall. That's what they're requesting for the change.
Okay, since we're not engineers.
Two items. One, I think it was Michael's point. If they're not here, it's been our precedent that we've tabled it. And secondly, as a code changes, codes change for future, not for past. And so even if we change this, it would be for the next applicant, not that applicant. So we're talking, yes, we can use them as an example, but keep in mind, we change code for future applications, not for past applications.
Okay.
For the circumstances, Madam Chairman, I move we table this to the next meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Rowan Cecil, second by Brian Marble. Any further discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this will be tabled for the next, we've had the public hearing on it, but we won't take any action on it until our next meeting, understanding that the planning commission is a recommending body, not the final say. So this will not go to the city council until after we have had a chance to discuss it, and we would ask that these the applicant be here to explain what they want to do. Okay. So now we go to item number 4. Rezone of parcel 02-116-004 and 03036-0027. Planning Commission will review, discuss, and may make a recommendation to the City Council regarding the request to rezone parcels 02-0016-004 and 03-036-0027. Excuse me. From single family large to single family traditional. So we will start with Scarlett with an explanation, if you would, and then we'll allow the petitioner to give us some information as well.
Okay. In a statement from the applicant, they would like to develop both parcels into residential development, allowing for smaller building lots for detached single-family homes. The parcels are located, excuse me, the parcels are located on the East Bench area of Cache County, more commonly known as the Providence Highlands. The rezone of the property from single-family large to single-family traditional would allow for the reduction of the minimum area for detached single-family home building lots from 21,600 square feet to 12,000 square feet in accordance with Providence City Municipal Code Title 10, Chapter 10.4, Section Zoning Regulations. The reduction in lot area will further allow for a sizable development that is more compatible with the existing Providence Highlands subdivision phase 1 in terms of lot size and overall layout of the subdivision's street alignment and lot configuration. Smaller lot sizes will also make single-family homes in this desirable area of the overall Cache Valley real estate market relatively more affordable as compared with housing construction on larger building lots. It needs to be underscored that Terex is well aware of the challenges that are associated with developing hillside properties with extreme topography over a percentage of the overall development property acreage. It is fully expected that the average square footage of the development building lots will be greater than the 12,000 square feet minimum, depending on the topographic conditions. The biggest thing between single family large and single family traditional, there are 3 things that stand out. Density, of course, there's 2.13 units per net acre for single family large. There's 3.75 units per net acre for single family traditional. Per net acre means that you have to subtract out the any hazard areas, non-buildable areas have to be subtracted out of the acreage. You can't use that for density credit. Also, any roads or areas dedicated to the public would be subtracted out of the gross acreage to reach the net acreage. So if you started out with 50 acres and you subtracted out for those things, you may end up with 35 acres that you could use for density credit. That doesn't mean that the lots can't incorporate some of those hazard areas into their lot. It just means that that property can't be used for the developer to figure their density calculation on that. Single family traditional requires a minimum 95-foot lot width at the setback line. Single family large, I believe, is 100 feet at the setback line. Single family traditional is what most of Providence City is zoned. And it is, as Scott Finley pointed out, it is what the neighboring Providence Highlands Phase 1 is zoned. I want to make one thing clear. I don't want any confusion with any neighbors. If you notice, and I apologize on some of the graphics, I don't use the high-tech programs. Mine's more for just representation period purposes. It makes this property, this zoning, look kind of like the number 7. That's because there's a portion of that property that is built on, and those houses will remain in single family large. Those houses are, it's not being proposed that this is a blanket rezone along that upper bench. It's those houses that are built, that are in that single family large zone, that portion will remain single family large. They are asking for the zone change on the property that is open and available for building.
This is a 3-lot piece that we're looking at. The
2
middle
lot.
piece. It's 2 lots.
Isn't it 2 lots?
It's 2 lots, but we've got
Okay.
3 sections here. It's a little confusing. The single family large, is that whole area, let's see, on illustration B, future zoning. That single family large, is that a subdivision? That whole thing is subdivision?
Not the upper east part. The houses are built along the road that's illustrated in that
Yes.
green part. And so that's the part that they are not, they're requesting the upper east part of that be changed, but they're certainly not requesting where the existing homes are be changed.
So can we zone part of a parcel, one zone and into 2 zones?
Well, we
Two-
can't,
two- yeah.
yes, you can use legal description to do that. But the parcels that are developed, they have their own parcel numbers. So those numbers aren't included in this request. So the parcel that is showing, the parcel that they would like to show doesn't include those homes that are along there. It's just that the maps kind of made it look like, kind of confused people. And I wanted to make sure that the people understood we're not rezoning any existing development property.
So in illustration B, we're seeing 3 different areas of land, the
Mhm,
north, the south, and the middle one.
mhm.
The north and the south are both the same parcel, correct?
No, the north and the green above where
Oh, I'm sorry.
the north and the green are the same parcel,
Okay,
the upper part of the green.
okay, I
The
see.
south is the separate parcel.
So the 2 parcels in question are the north one and the south one. And the middle one where the existing lots are, that's gonna go single family
Stay what it is.
large, all the way from the east to the west.
No, only where the homes are located.
Okay,
And so the
You
very
can see the
east
parcel
part,
numbers.
here, I'll just erase it. Okay, because the parcel is shaped like a, I don't know, backwards P.
kind of,
Yeah, okay, and so part of it we missed, is that, so that it's not quite represented correctly.
No, if you go to, I don't know what page it is, but if you go down to the bottom of your exhibits, it's white.
Or if you go to the county GIS site, you can see it
It would
better.
show you.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I went to the county GIS site and I saw the shape of it, but this illustration B does not lend itself to that. Illustration B, right above number 5, shows it as,
well, illustration B is the general plan. Is not, and so what illustration B is saying is that when we went through the steps to adopt the current general plan, at that point in time, as they looked at what they felt like would be future compatible zones for development in the city, that point in time, the city decided that north of 1000 north or south, sorry, north of 1000 south, up in that east area, that it seemed to make sense to zone that single family traditional. Because of the homes that were already zoned single family large, they recommended just staying consistent with that in that middle portion. And then the further south portion, again, they felt like single family traditional was in harmony with the other area. So that is illustrative of what the general plan, how the general plan anticipated zoning.
And their request is very similar to the general plan, the future of the general.
It is, other than they want to tie on the very east end of that
Yeah.
green part, they want to tie the two ends together.
With single family tradition.
Yes.
How much sidewalk have we got on the, what's that called, 1,000 north?
1,000 south.
South, I'm sorry, 1,000 south. Is there's sidewalk up there? We got sidewalk on that cutaway? What do they call it, a dugout?
I can't remember if there is sidewalk on the part between, someone from up in that area will have to refresh my memory.
Old house, there's no sidewalk on either side.
That's where I thought we were missing. So
That's the dugout, dugway.
I wouldn't exactly call it a dugway. It's
Isn't it?
So it looks like there's sidewalks on both sides, actually.
there's a part when you get a little bit further west. Right, yeah, it's outside the development. That area right through there doesn't have sidewalk along 10th South.
Right, but that's not, we're not even close on that one though. So there is sidewalk going up the hill, the steep hill.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So cities really, the staff doesn't have any concern then, what they've seen so far, from what we've seen so far. Is that correct?
The only thing the staff would say is that they are following the proposed general plan on the north section and on the south section, but that middle piece, they are proposing to deviate a little bit from the general plan on that. But again, as far as what uses can be on there, they're almost identical. I think the single family large allows a couple of agricultural type things that single family traditional may not, but for all intents and purposes, the uses, the houses, the zoning requirements, as far as setbacks, they're all, both zones are identical. The biggest difference is the net acre density and the width of the lots.
So in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, do we have some of this property set aside for park and trails?
I'm going to let, Ryan's been working on property acquisition for parks, so I'm going to let Ryan cover that one.
We're certainly interested, and we've talked with the developer on each of the different versions of developers that have talked about this. Obviously, the area needs a park.
And we're not, this zoning change has nothing to do with the parks, the roads, the access. I mean, when we go to development, when they're asking for a subdivision, that's when the city staff reviews the access as far as roads are concerned.
So as far as a road, when the plat comes in and when things are worked to construct, a second access, because of the fire requirement, a second access will be required. That's why this development has sat, because it has no second access and it can't have more than 30 homes on a single access. So to have any other homes developed in this development, a second access has to be made. So
Regardless of the zone.
regardless of the zone.
Right, that's what I'm saying, but the development, that'll come in when we're talking development.
When that,
Not zoning change, right?
yes, when that development proposes a concept plan, they will have to show a second access,
At least a second, maybe.
at least a second. Fire won't let them build without that, so.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions?
So I'm clear. property that is east of what's on Grandview Drive, but west of where the other single family large are, that's included in the legal description of the parcel to be rezoned. Yeah, are you with me?
Right. Yeah, the properties that aren't are the properties that are built on. Parcels that have houses on. That's the part.
Because they have their own numbers.
And they will stay single family large. We're not doing, they're not changing any of their zoning.
What is the zoning on the property that is on the west?
Are you looking at this?
We're talking about Grandview Road, right? And it sits on Grandview, so it's the lower elevation, the upper left corner.
The zoning on Grandview is single family traditional. The zoning on 8th East is single family large.
Well, I'm talking about the zoning that would be.
Ours is large,
You have large lots.
but I think it's still zoned as single family. Correct.
Okay.
Brian, will you pull the zoning map up on?
Yeah.
No, Old Grandview is single family traditional. On the east side of the road that has yet to be developed is single family large. But on the west side of Grandview, the old Grandview is single family traditional. But those lots were just big lots. That's the way they wanted to do them back in the when it was developed in the 60s.
Is that okay, Joe?
I didn't answer. I was just curious.
Okay, Scarlett, you're done with your explanation.
If you're
Danny, you're here to talk about, who's here to talk about this?
Jeremy.
Jeremy's right next to me. You need to be in front of a microphone, whichever one you want to do.
Jeremy Jensen, Providence Highlands LC. Thanks for the comment. I was listening and I did hear some of the thoughts. I know there's a lot of concern about 1000 South and Grandview Drive and the traffic that those roads can handle. It's fun for me to go down memory road a little bit. I was here in 2004 when we developed phase 1, Providence Highlands, and that was agricultural, and we rezoned that from agricultural to SFT. And there was a lot of discussion and a lot of worry and a lot of consternation about what that might happen and all the traffic and things. And at the time, 1000 South was a dirt road from 4th East up. And there was no access between the Sherm Sanders and Tim Wolfers. There was no access there. So we are aware that development does create traffic, and sometimes you need to make improvements and things, and we did. We went out and put in 1000 of all the improvements on 1000 South and took it from a dirt road to a paved road. It wasn't our property. We worked with that property owner to get that done, and impact fees did reimburse that. But we're familiar with what sometimes growth does create some growing pains, and I think that's why you have impact fees, and that's why you have policies to make sure that things develop out the way that you want them to. Providence is a beautiful place. I lived here for 3 years in the Providence Highlands when it was developing out, and I was very proud to be a part of it. And I think most people feel like it turned out great. It's a beautiful community, and believe it or not, those lots are smaller than the SFT. It was before the SFT zone even existed. Some of those lots are 10,000 square foot lots, which you couldn't do under any of those zonings now. But we did create great community, and we built park strips that were wider than they needed to be and sidewalks that were wider than they needed to be. And we put in a lot of amenities under that power line as part of the HOA that weren't required. It was just because we wanted to make the community nicer for people. We're very pro open space and good planning and all of those kinds of things. The single family traditional zone is more consistent with what already exists all around it. As was pointed out, I don't know if if you can scroll back to the parcel map that shows the different parcels or not, but we're really only asking for the rezone of the portion that would be east of where the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints owns already, and the existing single-family lots. Those would all remain the same. It's just connecting the two parts that were not in the general plan as SFT. I feel like SFT is a great zone. It creates a beautiful kind of development, housing. Sometimes we hear feedback from people looking to buy lots that half acre is just too big. We don't want to take care of that much property. And when you listen to a lot of the conservation folks who talk about water use, it's difficult to water and landscape and maintain a half acre property. And it's more consistent with sustainability to have smaller lots and to cluster properties, and create open spaces and deal with things that way. That's my perspective. And I do come from the perspective of having been a Providence resident in this particular area. So I think it's consistent with the surrounding uses. It is a beautiful kind of zoning opportunity to do what's consistent with what's already there. And I don't, as was mentioned in the write-up, it's not really feasible to get very small lots on this kind of a grade anyway. So it's going to be larger than what the SFT allows for. And I'm available to answer any questions that you might have. And I thank you for your willingness to entertain the rezone.
Question?
No.
I wonder if you would address where you're going to put another road,
Yeah, second access. Thank you.
because that's one of the major concerns.
Yeah,
for people on this
that was a
road.
concern that was mentioned that I failed to address. We have been working towards creating a second access, and we've actually a portion of the property that the second access will go through is in Millville City. And we have applied for a plat with Millville City to connect that upper road back down to Grandview Drive. The problem with that is Millville City has not processed that plat because they don't have the water or sewer to supply the development. So it's really the reason we don't have that connection is because we can't get an approval from Millville City and they don't have water or sewer infrastructure to support it. So we have also applied for a boundary line adjustment between Millville City and Providence City to allow the property to be to the jurisdictional city line to move and to incorporate all of this Millville property that is owned by Selco. Back in 2004, all of this property was in Millville City. That was all of phase one was in Millville City. And at that time, they recognized they don't have the infrastructure. They still don't have a citywide sewer system. Somehow that doesn't seem to make them believe that they don't have the ability to supply it, but we're working through that. They agreed that if at the time we were ready to develop, if they didn't have the infrastructure, it would move into Providence City. Providence City also signed a memorandum of understanding that said, if at the time you're ready to develop, Millville City can't supply services, we will accept the property and supply services. So we're just waiting for those agreements to become fulfilled. And that's what will create the second access, as well as give Providence City the ability to serve it and control what happens there.
Well, Ryan, can you show us with your cursor where that would be? I think that would be helpful.
I think that would be good for you to show if that's,
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
you want me to zoom in, zoom out?
I don't know how to stand up. So this road
So you
here.
point to it and Ryan can put his mouse where you're pointing.
Okay. So this is where the church property is. These are the existing lots. The reason we've been building this road south is so that we could get a connection back to Grandview Drive. In fact, this is Robert Montgomery, who built my house in Providence phase one. That's my home. He built it. I sold it. Anyways, this is where it would connect. This upper road to this lower road. I should have kept it because I would have.
It's the great American dream.
Doesn't that still come out on 10th South?
Yeah, that one would connect back here, and there'd be multiple accesses back to 10th South. And then Grandview Drive is an obvious other access point that would go down to Providence Canyon.
The pinch point for the fire is here, because it only has one out at this point. Once it passes here, then it could go north or south as far as the fire is concerned. But the pinch point right now is here. It only has one access at this point.
That would be how a second access would be created. I'm hoping that will happen really soon as we work through some different stuff.
A nice way to put it.
Yeah.
With the topography and with the land that you'll have to take out of there that is not buildable in the first part of what you're building, how many homes are you talking about?
Well, we have some conceptual plans and we've started discussing them with staff, but they're really not to a point that I could feel confident that they're buildable and meet code yet. So I don't really know how many total lots it would be. When we first started talking about this development, we thought it would be possible there could be a total of 500 homes. And that would be on all the Millville and all the Providence property. And Providence City was wise in saying, we want you to dedicate enough water for 500 homes, which we did. I can't see any possible way that we'd ever get to that number. I think the max would be far below that, even though we've prepared and planned on something larger.
Okay. I think, do you want to answer questions of the people that are in the room?
I don't mind. As long as nobody throws anything at me. This is the worst time of year for
Check
developers.
your pitchforks over here.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, this time of year, as you're all watching Hallmark films, like I'm the It's hard.
Okay, so we will entertain some short questions from the audience that either the city can answer or the developer can answer.
You might sit at a table, then they can have access to the
And if you
podium.
have a question, you'll need to come up and state your name for our minute taking person.
Okay, Robert Montgomery. Right, being heard?
Yep.
The question I have is this access that you want to create through the upper, what road is that, upper road? 800 East. Okay. So that road.
The one where the large homes are, is that what
Yeah.
you're talking about?
So if that road wraps around through Grandview, how does that give us another access other than Grandview and 1000? It doesn't appear to give us another access.
I think Ryan did a great job of explaining that. So Grandview Drive connects down to Providence Canyon Road. 1000 South goes straight west. With two really major arteries that go north and west. And Grandview, the upper part, the only pinch point is east of Grandview Drive. Does that make sense? So east of Grandview Drive is where there's only one access point. But once it connects back down onto your road, there's a second way out.
And I understand that concept, but talking about what Findlay was discussing is you are still putting all of the traffic onto 1000 and Canyon Road. There's still only one way out, or those two ways out of the whole area, and you're proposing to double the amount of homes from what's zoned currently.
Although the fire marshal has given his
Approval to that loop road out.
Well, not necessarily. I mean,
well,
he's giving that it has to have a second out. At this point, because it hasn't gone to concept or preliminary plat, the staff wouldn't review any beyond the zoning. So at this point, we're saying a second out has to be required of that subdivision. So the requirement could be met by coming through Grandview, because then if there is a blockage of traffic on 1000 South past Grandview, if the fire truck can't get in, the fire truck could come around and fight a fire. So that is looking from a fire perspective. And so that's why he's looking for a second. If there's more than 30 homes, it requires the fire department to be able to respond.
And I understand all of that.
Okay.
Yeah. That's not, the question really becomes, so you're creating a second out, which makes sense legally and fire traffic wise. But beneficially for the people that live there that are going to be in these new homes, they're not going to loop through Grand, they're going to go straight down 1000 West, and they're going to go straight down Canyon Road. So the real question becomes probably more for the city than it is for the developer. How do you mitigate and manage that traffic through those only two pathways? I guess that's my real question.
Okay. Okay, we have another question?
My name's Emily Thatcher. I'm just wondering, so if Millville doesn't cooperate, you don't get that loop connecting, two questions. Do you have a plan B for another way out of that? And then second of all, if they do allow you to adopt that into Providence City, will you be developing off of that further into that larger parcel to the south?
Yes.
Talk into the microphone.
Thank you for the question. Are there other ways of getting another second access? Yes, there are, but this is the preferred option. And with the road connecting, the intention is to also open up opportunities for more development on that south property. East, the area that we're asking for the rezone, I think will also have a road that would go north and south that would also end up probably connecting into that horseshoe shaped road. Ultimately, I'd love to see a road that will go all the way down to Fourth East, is that what you call it? It's right there, and that would parallel Hillsborough. But that there's some road grade issues that we need to work through on that. But that's what I would love to have happen, is have another access down to Fourth, down to that lower part, subject to code approval and all that.
And you would have to pass that off in order to. Okay.
And that's part of why we would like all of that property to move from Millville into Providence, so that we can. Millville has expressed concern about traffic coming into their city, and I think it will create traffic there. But the roads are in Providence and in Millville, and it would just be easier if it was all in Providence City, so that it could be handled kind of at the same time.
Scott James. I'm super confused about that middle part. You said it's going from the east side of the church property all the way south.
I'll show you the general plan already shows SFT here,
Right.
and it shows SFT
Right.
here. It shows SFL just
All the way
there,
there.
just that little chunk there.
Right.
So we're just saying we would like all of it to be the same. SFT.
So I live on that piece, so you want SFT clear down to my backyard,
Which one do you have?
right there,
This one?
right where it's pointed.
Right here. Yeah. So SFT would be right behind you. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was gonna go across straight from the church's corner
So
property.
all of this over here, and then it shows a piece that goes. Yeah. So you can see that that's all the same property. There's not, we probably noticed, we built a trail that goes through that area. There's no intention to build any housing there at all. Just,
Because it didn't reflect that on the thing we got in the mail. It was super confusing. It looked like that centerpiece was left alone.
I think, and I have the thing now, but I didn't study it maybe the way you did. The intention is just to make this piece consistent with the north and the south.
Because it just said the two parcel numbers. It didn't say anything about that middle parcel.
Of this
of
part,
the zone. The upper part.
up here,
Yeah,
okay.
it didn't say anything with that parcel number. It was only the north and the south parcel number.
Yeah, and it's a little bit weird shaped parcel. You know how it goes around like that, but it's all one parcel.
Because it had a different parcel number down that center part on the map that we got in the map. It had 3 different parcels.
Sandy Barrett. I just have some questions. Is it Bennett? I'm sorry.
Barrett.
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 Okay.
So, same question. I didn't get anything in the mail. And I'm up on 800. So I had a question for Jeremy.
Hang on just a second. He'll be here. Wait on your question till he gets.
So what we got in the mail was the general plan. A picture of the general plan, not what you were proposing to rezone to. Okay.
And it's right here if you want.
So when you guys were talking about keeping the single family large section, single family large, those are all homes that are already built.
Right.
So that's
Doesn't
not it.
change that.
Nothing's changing. Well, how could it?
Right.
The homes are built.
We're going to
The
drag them
lots
over.
Right, the lots aren't going to be split up. So I think that was where the confusion is. So really, that whole area, you want to make single family traditional, even behind. So we live here. So you want to, initially, when we talked about this, we were hoping, when we talked about it, to leave the area that's single family large now, single family large. This section. Because we're already here and we bought our homes with the intent of that was our neighborhood. The surrounding area would be single family large. So is there any reason why you couldn't keep this section single family large and do that single family traditional on each end? Because then the people who have already bought, they stay consistent with what they have.
I see what you're saying.
And I think we talked about that initially a couple of years ago, but that was the direction that,
Everything.
Why don't you come back to the mic?
So everything below is single family traditional. Everything to the north is single family traditional. Basically, everything in the whole area is single family traditional, and the general plan shows all of this being the same. I'm not really sure why this little part was kept out as SFL.
well, initially, remind me, well, 2 years ago, we talked about that. That was part of what we were going to do if there were changes to the zoning, is keep that section that was already built, single family large. Am I remembering this right?
No. You have to come up. Yes. Short and sweet. So you have a quick explanation, right?
I think so.
Okay.
Jen Arnell.
Name.
Jen Arnell. Originally, the city was concerned about having Providence available for everyone. Everyone ought to be able to live in Providence. So they started talking about LCRs. But this area where they wanted single family large was to accommodate the people who wanted a larger part. So it was an overall plan of, yeah, let's have Providence for everybody, but that doesn't exclude single family large. So that area became single family large. Single family traditional was the next step. And then the LCRs and whatever they're called now. That was what I remember.
Okay. I did have one more question for Jeremy. You were talking about the west behind 800 East, that you left that with trails and you didn't touch that and you don't plan on touching it, but that's an easement with telephone poles. So I don't think you could use that anyway.
Well, they have in other areas of the city, but I don't like that.
Okay, but is that even a possibility? I don't even think that's a possibility. because of the telephone poles. Am I wrong? I think that's an easement. The only reason I'm bringing that up is you were saying how nice it was of the developers to put trails in there and to put that, and that is awesome. That's right behind our house. But I don't think you could build on there if you wanted to because of the telephone poles with the easement.
Yeah, I think you were right. I couldn't do a single family lot there, but I could have carved it all up and given it to someone in their backyard.
Okay, I see that point and I understand that.
And I would have been able to sell a larger
Yeah.
lot. And,
Yeah, I see.
yeah. So,
Okay. And also the slopes, I think so. I think that's it. I just maybe want the consideration of possibly leaving the area that's already been developed, single family large, and maybe going around it with single family traditional. That's a whole huge area. That way the people who've already bought expecting to have their neighbors consistent with their homes would be happy, and then all that space for single family traditional.
Okay, thank you. Another question?
Scott Finley again, Providence City. Just want to maybe have Jeremy clarify. I think he misspoke, but correct me if I'm wrong. You said you were just intending to have everything is up there, already single family traditional, and you're just wanting to make it conform that single family large bit. But I think according to the actual zoning map that you showed up there, everything up there is currently single family large. What you were mentioning is the master plan of the city intends that north section and the south section to be single family traditional, whereas the master plan, which is not the current zone, leaves that middle section as single family large, correct? And so the rezone request is asking everything up there to move from single family large to single family traditional.
that's correct.
Yeah. Which is effectively, I mean, I know it's not exact, but if you look at at least in acreage terms, it's roughly moving from a little less than half acre lots to a little less than quarter acre lots as the minimum requirement. If the rezone is approved, correct?
I think of it more of like half to third acres is really more of a decision.
But on the minimum side, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So I mean, it's not going to round out exactly to a quarter or a third, but I think they'll average out more like a third.
but you did mention it would conform with Providence Highlands Phase 1, and there are certainly lot sizes there that are, I think, 0.22, 0.23, which is under a quarter.
So what I want to clarify there is that Providence Highlands Phase 1 was in more dense zoning than SF2.
More dense.
It was more.
Okay, so this would be staying above the Providence Highlands Phase 1.
Right. So it was a different zone. The city had a different zone at the time, and it allowed for 10,000 square foot lot. And so that the whole center section, down by Robert Montgomery, that's the whole center area is like 10,000 square foot lots, which is, and I really like the way it turned out. I think the homes are beautiful. I think people take good care of them. It's a great.
Sure, I live there. I love it. So
yeah, and I think you can do a really good job with small lots, even smaller than what we're asking for.
I think my main concern has been addressed maybe by the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is effectively reducing lot size. I already had concern that even if it was developed out at the current zone of single family large, I already had concerns about just the additional traffic, and increasing the density by decreasing the lot size would presumably put more vehicles coming off the hill. And so maybe it's premature, but maybe it would be interesting to hear about plans for 10th South and Old Grandview to see about roads there. As I see it, it's already several blind spots, several blind corners. I'm worried about kids getting run over. And so maybe just addressing that might help to at least satisfy some curiosity. So thank you.
And I think it's a good point. And when we came in with Providence Highlands Phase 1, everyone was really pushing us for 5 acre lots. And, it's just a matter of perspective, but change is always hard. And if those folks had had their say at the end of the day, we wouldn't have had a home for you.
Okay, question?
Hey, I'm Allison Hawkins. I live up on Grandview. To Scott's point, we live right there on the corner of Grandview and cars go by at like 50 miles an hour. My kids are like in danger every day. So I do have a lot of concerns about funneling hundreds and hundreds of more cars down Grandview. So can you just elaborate a little bit? And by the way, I'm pro-development. I love it. I just moved from Washington, D.C. I just am a little concerned about adding, if you add 500 homes up there, that's 1,000 cars down the 2 current existing roads. That's a lot. So can you talk a little
Except he
bit,
did say that it's not 500.
but he could. It's on to do that, right? No?
No, that's, the city required enough water for that many.
Okay.
But we could never get.
300, whatever. Okay, so this is not a trick question, honestly. So you said that if Millville doesn't cooperate to get the Candy Cane Road, which is an F, you said you'd have to look at another option. Do you have any idea like what that would be right now?
It would need to be something connecting directly to Grandview somewhere along that area.
Right, so like right in front of my house.
Yeah, so you might prefer this out.
But listen, I'm excited about a park, like all these things are really good. So I'm not here to like bash on your plan. I just do think that the council really should consider the road thing. I know that it's part of the later process, but it's so critical to like what's going to happen to the neighborhood. The traffic is the main thing because I think everybody's happy with their houses. We like the neighborhood. It's all good. It's not like you're adding apartments like the previous plan. It's crazy. And I used to have apartments in my backyard. I'm not opposed to apartment. So I think that the road thing should really be considered seriously as you guys are considering what to do with this plan. But
I'm hearing that traffic is your concern.
yes, yes, yes. And I understand that the roads piece is part of the later part of the process. But as you guys as planning and zoning commissioners, I think that that's something you should ask a lot of questions around, just make sure everybody feels comfortable with the plan and is calculating the amount of traffic that's going to come off the hill. And going down Grandview, there's a lot of kids on Grandview. I stayed with my parents on Grandview Drive for like a year while my house was getting built. There are kids playing in the road all the time. So
We need to teach them not to do that.
I was gonna say mine probably did that bad idea. But like if that's the main carve out, I agree with you. It's, you know, probably better for me personally, but there's a lot of families on Grandview that would see a lot of traffic coming down that road that could be a safety issue for a lot of kids there, and heaven forbid something happens there. So again, obviously this land has to be developed at some point, right? So that's it. I don't think that, you know, I'm personally not here to say don't develop the land. It should develop the land. I would just implore the commission to really consider the road situation. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, it might be interesting for you to know that when we did the original boundary line adjustment and the water transfer, we did traffic studies and we did anticipate up to 500 homes. And the studies concluded that the roads were adequate. And at the time, there wasn't enough water pressure in Providence City for any of the hillside to be developed. We built a new pump house. We connected a water tank from lower Providence Canyon to upper Providence Canyon. As I mentioned, we improved 1,000 South to have paving instead of the rutted old dirt road that it was. So I feel like we really have been kind of team players that you'd like to have in charge of doing some development.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so traffic study, 4 trips out of every home, Andrea Diamond,
Name.
sorry, Andrea Diamond. So Scarlett, in a previous meeting a couple years ago, said that there's about 4 trips per home. So my question for everyone involved is a little preliminary, but Providence does not like speed bumps. How can we slow that traffic down? Because 1,000 South is a terrible runway already. So just a question about that. And then the other question is about the open space / parks, because whether people are watering that or the city is watering that, it's water. And there are beautiful ways of keeping like grassland and stuff like that. So we did have open space where dogs can run, kids can dig in the dirt, etc. Is that part of your, or would you please consider that? This is really early, I know, but you know, in the name of conservation.
Anything you want to say about that?
Well, I think it's a great point. We need to be concerned about water. We need to conserve where we can. I think xeriscaping is something that homeowners should consider and parks should consider. And I think it's a very valid point. Well noted.
Okay. Brian, can you address anything on the roads at this point?
1000 South and Canyon Road are defined as high volume roads. I think they would be our major collector roads, but if they've had a study, I mean, I'm not aware of the study. It came later than that, but I'd have to review the study. So, but at this point, we don't generally get to that point. We're asking for, we know that there has to be a second access, and that would be a real requirement. As far as slowing roads, I would say that if everybody in this room always drove the speed limit, everybody behind you would as well.
Honestly, I live on a road that's really hard to get out of my driveway because people go fast. And by the time I am partway out, they're on me like that. So, could we close my road?
We always drive the speed limit every time you drive in Providence.
I do.
Okay, well then everybody behind you drives the speed limit too.
We can make light of those kind of things. I as a planning commission, we do understand those concerns. And as Ryan said, if people would obey the speed limits, there are ways to get people to obey the speed limits. And we're committed to the safety of our citizens. And so to let you know that that's always a concern as we look at developments and what's going on. But sometimes it is hard to get out of your driveway, even on my road. Okay, we're going, there's one more question. Is that a question?
I just have a question. Yes, I think I can do a question. I'm good at this game. My name is Ashley Nance. I guess my question for the planning and zoning is, we've talked about this property a lot the last couple of years, and I'm not against the development up there. I'm actually quite excited to see it, but I would challenge you to ask yourselves, why go against what the planning and zoning has already recommended when they painstakingly have gone over it. It used to all be SFL. And so in the master plan, which has only been updated a year and a half-ish ago, they recommended to keep that SFL. And so I would really,
No.
Yeah.
Single family traditional.
no, it's SFL.
Just the middle part.
Yeah, correct. The middle part, they left SFL. And I just ask yourself, why did they do that? And I feel like it's because it was a middle ground. This has been a contentious thing, and I feel like it's reasonable to leave a piece, but then to give also. It's good neighbor relations. So, okay, thank you.
The current zone is SFL. The master plan proposes a move over to that.
You have to come to the name.
Scott Finley again, sorry. The current zone is SFL according to the municipal ordinance tab that we put up there. No. Yeah,
That's correct.
it's the proposal under the master plan is to move it over to what's on the right figure.
Correct.
Just wanted to
Because that
clarify
matches the rest of what's up there.
I'll just echo what he's saying. That's right. The planning commission and the general plan has recommended that the majority of it go to SFT and that middle part stay SFL. And we are asking for all of it to go to SFT.
And just a reminder that is the minimum. That means that you can do the lots bigger because of the topography or whatever. Okay. So, okay. I'll close the question and answer part of it. Now we need discussion from the planning commission. And just so everybody knows, it's the planning commission. It's not the planning and zoning, it's the planning commission is our title. Okay. Can I take a sidebar here just for a moment? Just to remind everyone that we're having a tree lighting ceremony, because I know you're all going to get up and leave after we do this. And we'd like you to attend. It's just going to be over here at the roundabout. And so please come and support the city.
Tomorrow, 5:30.
Tomorrow at 5:30. Santa will be there. I know some of you have some wishes maybe you could ask Santa for. So anyway, I'll come off of my sidebar and I will ask for comments. This is our discussion time.
Questions?
Okay. Trish?
We'll have to look
Rowan?
at it. We'll have to look at it, man. Nothing wrong with it.
Okay. Joe, any questions?
It was interesting to me that in the part there's homes built that are single family large right now, there's properties that are small as a third acre, even smaller than a third acre. There's a 0.31 acre lot up there. So given that it wouldn't be that much different than what's already been built up there. That's interesting to me. There's a lot smaller than the zoning already. I guess the single family large is probably newer. But yeah, that was interesting.
Okay. So, Michael?
Well,
I'm still just going through it. I understand the side of the homeowners. And even looking at the aspect of, as the master plan was updated, portions above going the traditional, it would be similar to what else is in the area, same with down below. And identifying the middle area to stay single family large, because that's what that's what's there. But I also see the developer's side.
But as Tyler said, some of those lots are even smaller.
Yeah. Maybe because there's open space all around, everything seems bigger, but I don't have any other questions. I don't have any other questions. That's where
So
I'm
do we
at.
want to vote on it?
Madam Chairman, I move that we make a recommendation to the city council regarding parcels 02-116, 0004, and 03-036, 0027, the rezone from single family large to single family traditional.
I'll second that.
Okay, so I have a motion by Rowan Cecil, a second by Robert Perry. Any further discussion?
We need to include the findings of facts and
We
conclusions
do.
as contained in the staff reports.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Add that to my.
So no, I don't have any other questions.
Okay. So with the addition of the finding of fact and conclusions and the finding of fact,
And
conclusion.
conclusions. I don't think there's any good conditions. I don't think there's that.
We don't have any conditions on here.
Yeah, so I think there's just those two.
Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Any opposed? Okay. All right, so the motion carries. We'll recommend that to the city council. Okay, this is item number 5, parcel 02-101-001, rezone recommendation. Thank you, Jeremy. Providence City Planning Commission will consider and may recommend to the Providence City Council the rezone of property in the general area of Sarah Street and 300 North, parcel 02-101-0001, currently zoned as single family large, with a request that it be rezoned to single family traditional. Scarlett, if you would bring us up to speed on that.
Looks like my battery finally decided to now charge.
Kick in.
Okay. I gotta get back to the other page. Sorry. So the public hearing was already held on this, and council took comments, council made the recommendation to continue it. Commission, or sorry, not council, commission. I'm sorry. The
We've been
commission.
elevated.
Sorry. Well, maybe my battery's not, it's not letting this load. Oh,
Do you
dear.
remember that we tabled this after the
And that's,
after the public hearing?
that's part of the reason why Stephen Wood is in the audience. With one of the concerns at that point in time, we wanted to make sure that when we considered development in this area, that we knew what would be required in order to meet not just static pressures, but pressures when we're drying down for fire protection. And so it's taken us a bit of time, and the developer has been patient. And we've got another development group that has had to be patient with us as well. They've been patient, and we feel like we're probably at a point now that Steve can make some recommendations throughout the water master plan. It's not completed yet, but they do have some data. So we felt like the timing was such that we could bring this back up for consideration. I feel like that's a fair statement.
I agree. It's given us time to be able to get our water master plan up to where we need it, and then can continue to finish that as this works to the next step. So it would allow it to work to the next one, to the concept. But in order for this at this point is to see whether whether it could be rezoned or not, and whether that's the recommendation. But we feel that there's enough movement on the master plan and to get us there that the discussion could now be had, and the same points you've probably discussed before may be valuable here, but we did appreciate that time to be able to get that plan, and so anyway, Steve is here if we have questions about the status of that. But
Danny is here as the developer as well. And we are talking about the same thing. We're talking about property that is currently zoned single family large. The developer is requesting single family traditional. One difference in the general plan, it did not anticipate that this property would change. So rather than just a section being a little bit different than the general plan, this entire parcel that he's requesting is a little bit different than the general plan. I also wanted to clarify a couple of comments. The reason why, when Tyler looked and could find a lot that was less than 20,000 square feet in single family large, is because in the single family large zone, they are allowed some lot size averaging. They were also allowed lot size averaging in single family traditional zone 20 years ago or 16 years ago, when Highlands 1 came in. That's why they were able to do smaller lots as long as the overall averaging and density worked out. So it's not that something was done in error. It's just a function of the lot size averaging, which can still take place in the single family large zone. In the single family traditional, they can average out the frontages, but you can't go below 12,000 square feet in either of those two zones now. So that's the reason there. Again, the big differences are the net acreage. The density per net acre is 2.13 in the single family large. The lot width at the setback line is 100 feet in the single family large, 95 feet in the single family traditional. And the density in single family traditional is 3.75. Minimum lot size in single family traditional is 12,000. Minimum lot size in single family large is 20,500. But there is that, particularly in hazard, in areas that have sensitive areas, they can do a little bit of lot size averaging to be able to create lots that better accommodate the terrain of the area. So
Any questions? All right, thank you for the explanation. Okay, do we have people that are here to speak? Oh, about that? Or I think I better stay consistent here. Scarlett, you've done yours, developer. Danny, are you speaking? If you'd like to.
Or after me, I guess.
You guys can duke it out.
You go ahead. Plus, minus, plus, minus.
Go ahead.
My name is Stephen Wood. I'm with Sunrise Engineering. We're currently going through the Providence City Culinary Water Master Plan. It's probably been about 5 months since you've seen me, since we were going over your sewer master plan. So now I got to talk about a cleaner topic. So currently in your water master plan, I'll just give you a brief update of where we are currently to give you an overview. So we have gone through with the city and performed fire hydrant testing and what that was. And some of the residents may have seen us going about, and that was, yes, is that better?
Yeah.
Sorry. We've been going around the town and opening up strategic fire hydrants and testing their pressures and flow rates to determine the capability to fight fires, as well as it offers data to calibrate a digital model so that we can provide data across the entire town without having to open every single hydrant. So if anybody saw us around town, that's what we were doing. We weren't just playing in the water. So we have completed that. We tested over 23 hydrants. We've gone through the system and provided a preliminary model for it, and we're analyzing that currently with developments such as Danny's in mind, in terms of their impact on the water system, particularly their storage, source capacity, demand on your water rights or your legal rights, your treatment, as well as your distribution network to provide average day demand, peak day demand, as well as the fire flow capacities. From my understanding, with this particular parcel of land that was considered for rezoning, the concern was the capability to provide fire flow as well as the impact on the water system distribution as a whole. Is my understanding on that correct from previous what was tabled?
It was the pressure, yes.
Okay, awesome.
The concern about having enough pressure.
Got it. Okay. On a couple of items. So real quick on the storage, we're still evaluating the storage. The big thing about storage capacity is you do have a new tank being constructed, and so we are factoring that in. But the primary thing is the way your water system is ran is those storage facilities are more or less dictated to pressure zones. The reason for that is we don't want to waste energy in pumping water just to let it fall through a PRV station to lose that pressure. And so the way Rob, your water master, or your
Public Works Director.
Public Works Director, sorry, I get always my titles mixed up. The way he operates, it's actually a very smooth operation that he runs. Quite proud of his work that he does. But he actually keeps your water in higher positions to provide the maximum pressure capabilities and conserving that energy. In terms of your sources, you are pretty lean, but this development isn't what's making you lean. It's just the development that's happened over the last 10 years is making you lean in your source. So we are looking at that. Your water rights, there was some recent work done on your water rights to allow you to do some trading, if you will, with your water, more or less giving your irrigation shares to another company to allow you to pull more out of the drinking water spring. This is one of your first years with that in place, and that has provided some additional flexibility with your legal rights. Things are looking positive there again, but they are never turn down an eye to buy water. How's that? So, but again, there you do need to be concerned about that, but this development isn't particularly going to push you into a danger zone by itself. It's been the past 10 years of development that's pushing you to consider this. The major concern was, again, that fire flow. And as we were looking at it, we did test some hydrants that are right on the fringes of this area. Those fire hydrants were able to produce over 1,500 gallons a minute without reducing the static pressure at that particular hydrant below 20 PSI. And that's critical for a couple of issues within the drinking or the Department of Environmental Quality. They require that during a fire flow event, a certain flow rate is required based on the structure's size in the vicinity. So, and the key limit there is 3,000 square feet.
If a house is over 3,000 square feet, it will require 1,500 gallons a minute to fight a fire, up until another limit that is set by the fire marshal. I'll get to that in just a minute, but anything less than 3,000 square feet is only required of 1,000 gallons a minute. The fire marshal evaluates building plans and determines their, if you will, their fire rate. And there is that threshold above 3,000 does change. And some structures do require more than 1,500 gallons a minute. And that is when they often will install internal sprinkler systems or fire break walls or other structural elements within the building to mitigate that fire flow and bring it down to 1,500 gallons a minute. Historically, most cities, including Providence, provide 1,500 gallons a minute fire protection out of their hydrants. And they put the burden on altering the structure on the developers and on the builders to meet within that realm. If it just so happens that their system provides more, great, but it's not the city's intention to provide more than 1,500 gallons a minute at any given fire hydrant. So the fire hydrants immediately around the parcels of question were able to provide that 1,500 gallons a minute. And what that 20 PSI rating is no fire hydrant, if you will, can drop below 20 PSI in a fire event. And that's to prevent other homes from losing pressure in their situation during a fire flow event. That's also to prevent contamination being sucked into your pipes. You always want a positive pressure in your pipes to keep it clean.
Did you say 20 PSI or
20
20%?
20 PSI, sorry. So 20 pounds per square inch.
But you're allowed to go down to.
And that's at the critical node. So we couldn't have a pressure gauge on every single fire hydrant where we test one. So what we use is the data we've collected to calibrate the model, and then we run what's called a multi-fire flow scenario, which checks every single fire hydrant, and then it finds the critical node and watches that pressure to see if it drops below that point. So we haven't gotten to that point of the analysis. What we have done is we've evaluated the fire hydrants at these locations, and everything's indicating at this point that we do have the capabilities to provide the fire flow. Now, one thing that needs to be made clear is during any subdivision that gets submitted during the preliminary plat, these routing of the proposed water lines are modeled and they are evaluated for this particular thing. So in the event that the existing infrastructure is not capable of providing this 1,500 gallons a minute at all the fire hydrants in which the developer proposes to build, they do and are required, if they want to move forward with that plan, to provide either larger pipe sizes, PRV stations, pump stations, or whatever is necessary to provide that minimum fire flow protection.
Steve?
Yes.
So at this point, just to add to that, reminding that we're still on this development and not the review of the water plan itself. But back to this one, as we've discussed, we would need looping of service in the area, and where it does change between pressure zones, there would be requirements of PRVs, but those will be taken care of in future discussions with plan. At this point, the rezone, would you say that it would be detrimental to change the zone from the water perspective, to change it from, well, what would the impact be to change it from the single family large to single family traditional that's being requested? Would you, how would the water be affected by that difference in zoning requests?
So one big thing, so what Ryan did say, and we did meet with the developers representative earlier to discuss, expect looping to be required, expect a potential PRV to maintain these pressures. But the one concern was, well, what does the change and increasing of the densities home do to the water system demand? And so there's two impacts. One is your average day demand, so how much each home is using. And so by increasing the demand or increasing the density, you will increase houses, which will increase your average day indoor use. But one of the things that is often not considered is by increasing the density, most times people don't reduce their house size. They reduce their yard size. They just put the same size of house on a smaller lot. And so what that does is by increasing densities, You have the same total acreage, you just have more homes. And so your indoor use goes up, but your outdoor use typically goes down. Now, one of those behaviors that we're trying to model and understand with Providence is the outdoor watering behavior. Some cities are very intense with their outdoor watering, some are more conservative. And so that's a number we haven't quite teased out, but this development will cause an increase to indoor water demand, which is your stable water demand throughout the year. Doesn't matter what time of year, you're always going to want to take a shower. What it will decrease is the outdoor demand. As these lots get smaller, the houses typically stay the same size and there's less landscape or ornamental gardens to water. And so your outdoor summer peak water demand will decrease actually.
Is there a balance there?
There is a balance.
What's increased versus what's decreased? Is that a wash?
There, for some cities, yes, some not. Right now, I'm just not far enough into the numbers to know of Providence. So that's my next 3 weeks is to eat those numbers out. But there is indication that Providence does like to water outside. There is some, you have beautiful lawns and they are gorgeous, but they do take water. And there is a tendency to be a little bit higher at this point. It's looking that way. And so there may be actually a wash in terms of demand. But the big thing to understand is increasing density will increase your base level, that average day demand that happens year round, but it will decrease those spikes that happen on 24th of July in the range between June and August. So in terms of the water perspective, from now, yes, they will consume more water, but it's beyond what single large versus single traditional. It's really sixes. So I don't know. It was a long explanation. I'm sorry.
Does the commission have any questions?
When do you expect your results and studies to be completed? I think you said some of it was preliminary at this point.
So we were planning to have the full master plan completed by late January, mid-February to present. And I'd actually like to get on the agenda sometime maybe in January to come back before the commission to present that once again, but with more findings. But right now we are still on track to end of January, mid-February completion.
Okay, thank you. Guess that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to say thank you. A year ago today, we had a major fire in my house because of all the engineering that had been going on over the years. We had plenty of water to fight the fire with, kept to a minimum. We're still not done fixing it, but the engineering is appreciated.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're on, Danny.
Danny McFarland, thank you for your time. Yeah, so we're requesting single family traditional. There's essentially single family traditional portions of the east, to the south, to the west, and to the north. It's bounded by single family traditional in many areas around this parcel. Really, part of it comes down to our actual density. We have a concept already on this piece. Our actual density is 1.7 units per acre, lots per acre. And that's simply because there's so much terrain to deal with. Some of the lots are larger, but it helps with our overall density to be able to go small on a percentage of the lots. And another issue is, on our first phase that it's just completed Sagecrest. It's at the end of Sherwood. Those lots were listed for sale at 130,000 per lot for a third acre. They ended up selling for 175. Affordability. I mean, I see this with my business all the time, consulting with clients. I mean, affordability is the biggest issue, and it's been known. I mean, citizens made it known here in Providence they don't want high density. There's got to be a trade-off at some point, and I think single-family traditional is a pretty simple trade-off. It's allowing a little bit more density. Personally, I'd like to see it go further, but that's a conversation for another day. This is a unique piece. We have 5 access points out of this piece, or potential access points, and so yeah, overall we've met with the staff and fully are on board with looping water lines and PRVs. And so this is nothing that surprises us. So I guess any questions for me?
Anyone have questions? Pretty clear.
Those 5 potential access points, could you point them out?
Yeah.
Pull it up. There's a little map, but I'll pull up a bigger one to give me just a sec.
So if you'll point to them, Ryan will put his cursor.
Just a sec.
Okay, so there's Sherwood Drive over here on the southeast. And there's the extension of Sherwood Drive on the north. Sorry, Ryan.
Hang on a second.
Sorry, I was catching.
Yeah,
So Sherwood Drive.
Drive on the northeast. There, Ferris Street on the north boundary. Ferris Street would extend on the south boundary to into the area of Radical property. And then 300 north on the west. About here. Down a little bit. Right there. And then actually there is a 200 north that was down west about this location. So there's, I guess, technical sense. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ryan, the major roads there, we're talking about Second North, Sarah Street, or is it more than that?
Spring Creek Parkway is the connection there, major one, but Sarah would be a major it's probably a minor collector actually. I know that Sherwood is a master planned, but I don't know that's, so you'll see that the master plan ones come through. I'd have to look to see which one okay. So at this point, there's not a major or minor. So these are there's minor ones in there proposed, but no major one. The major is the Spring Creek Parkway. There is a few minor ones to connect Sarah, this one to come across and one to go to the north. So we're planning 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we're planning the 5 connection points, and that matches up with what's there. If you can see kind of the master plan collection roads. So these are minor collector roads. And they'll feed hopefully to Spring Creek and out from there.
Any other questions? Thank you. I allowed questions to the developer on the last one. Are there questions for the developer from anyone? Right.
I'd make a motion, Chair, if that's all.
Okay.
I'd make a motion that we recommend to the Providence City Council the rezoning of property in the general area of Sarah Street and 300 North, parcel 02-101-0001, currently zoned as single family large to single family traditional, subject to the findings of facts, conclusions, and conditions as set forth in the staff report.
Do I have a second? Okay, got a motion by Michael Fortune, a second by Roland Cecil. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Okay. We have a preliminary plat for Parkview Heights subdivision, item number 6. Planning Commission will consider and may take action on a request for approval of a preliminary plat for the Parkview Heights subdivision, a proposed 5-lot residential subdivision located in the general area of 400 East and 200 South. This is, if you're familiar with it, 200 South does not go all the way through. It's not a through street, but above 300 East, it does continue. So it's up in that area. So Scarlett, we would love to hear your, if you're gone to your phone now.
Yeah.
Might be
You're not pulling up my files. So I will pull up the agenda on my phone and we'll go from there. This property is currently zoned single family traditional, so they're building within their zone. Their intent is to have a single family development. They've got 5 lots. As you can see on the staff report for the preliminary plat, it talks about that the Utah code gives the city the ability to create legislation, that the legislative body can create enact ordinances requiring that a subdivision comply with the provisions of the municipality's ordinances and the provisions of the state code. And then it also talks about the general plan. One of the things that we'll talk about in a minute is the framework map. The general plan framework map represents the preferred scenario for planning and management. That this framework map is not the zoning map. It just talks about scenarios. And then and looking through it, we also look at the master plans. We look at the Parks, Trails, and Recreation Master Plan and the Transportation Master Plan. We also have a requirement for water. And just on a side note, the development that you just talked about on that zone change, if they do proceed to the development process, part of that, they will have to figure out how much culinary and outdoor water usage their development will generate. And then they will be required to either dedicate water rights, water shares, or fee in lieu for the city to have to be able to acquire more water. So we do have a provision to help take care of water. In this particular development, they have to look at the very same thing. Then the staff report just literally goes right down the preliminary plat requirements. And as you can see, there's check marks by all of these. They're not going to phase. It's going to be done in one phase. So then our conclusions, the preliminary plat is consistent with the general plan and development in the surrounding areas. And now we come to that framework map. It shows that this is an area that is neighborhood residential area. It talks about in our Parks, Trails, and Recreation map, this property lies within the half-mile level of service for Brigger Park, Von Bear Park, and the Cattle Corral Park. The Parks Open Space Urban Trails map does not call for parks, for new parks or trails in this particular area. That's not to say that in the Vaughn Park area there isn't some, but right here in this development, it's not showing any. And then the transportation plan shows an existing local road without limited access, which is what's being proposed as they improve 200 South. And then the water availability requirements are listed right there. They would need a total water requirement of 9.25 acre feet. And then depending on water shares or rights will depend on how that actually comes in. as far as our conditions go, there aren't any comments that they would need to address in red. Aaron Walker, his comments actually refer kind of past the plating process now. His comments are looking down to the future on those big lots. The homes will have to work and make sure that their driveways and the placement of the homes and everything provide for adequate fire protection, but that comes at a much later stage at this point. He does talk about what he needs as far as street access, and he does put the developer on notice of future things to think about. And then, of course, the applicant will continue to meet all relevant federal, state, county, and Providence City rules, laws, codes, and ordinances. Approval by the city of any application or paperwork submitted does not alleviate the owners and/or their agents from their responsibility to understand and conform to the local, state, and federal laws. Providence City's approval is not intended to and cannot be construed to allow any laws to be broken or to be violated. So those are the ongoing conditions that we're presenting. So based on that staff report, this preliminary plat is ready for approval. Now that's not the last step. They'll have to go through final plat, construction drawings. They'll have to look at their performance security, warranty bond, those type of things. So that's yet to come in the next steps. But at this point in time, they've submitted everything we've asked for.
Thank you, Scarlett. Do we have anybody here to speak to that?
We do. Corey is.
Corey, do you want to say anything?
Corey Crumpton. I don't have anything to add. If there's questions, I'm happy to take it, but we appreciate your.
So you're the developer.
I am the applicant.
Oh, the applicant.
Yes, I'm not the developer. Just kind of representing the family in the application.
Anyone have questions for Corey?
Brian did.
The access, if we're requiring, or is the city requiring access from both first south and second south?
No.
There's no intention to develop first south into anything.
No.
There's no need to, since there's only 5 lots involved. So they come on second south. Any plans to tie into the trail system? Valley?
Back in Vaughn's Park.
Yeah, there's a trail that goes up from Vaughn's Park up to third south. And the second south would take it directly east to the drop in.
Yeah, I don't think we have any plans to add any sort of trails or access there.
Does the property go down to the trail?
The property extends down to the lower part of the elevation. It doesn't come in contact with the trail, but it goes down the hillside.
It's adjacent, it's adjacent to the city property where the trails are.
That's right.
Okay.
5 homes.
5
lots.
5 lots, yep.
Been a long time coming.
Okay, thank you. Okay. No more questions?
No,
I'll entertain a motion.
I can try
Your
this.
turn.
I can try it. I propose that we recommend to the city council that we accept. Right page here.
We make a recommendation.
That we make a recommendation to accept
Oh, we're approving this.
approving it. So we're going to approve it.
You were doing it right.
Are we still asking the city council to approve it, or are we just going to
No,
approve it?
we're going to approve it.
Okay, so I make a motion that we approve the preliminary plat for Parkview Heights subdivision. And generally in the area of 400 east, 200 south. Also known as parcel 2, 101 and 1. Given the staff's findings, recommendations, and conclusions. What did I miss?
I think there were some conditions.
Oh, and conditions. Okay, getting this. Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table brought by Brian Marble, second by Michael Fortune. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we come to item number 7. Special review and preliminary plat for Hillside Meadows subdivision. The planning commission will consider and may take action on a request for approval of a special review and preliminary plat for Hillside Meadows subdivision, a proposed 2-lot subdivision, residential subdivision located in the general area of 59 South and 300 East. So we've got Scarlett here to talk about that.
Well, the reason why special review is in front of this is because this is proposing a lot that's behind it. There will be one lot that has frontage and width along 3rd East.
Just 2 words, flag lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the west lot will not have that. They will have access back to it. And so, and because this is in one of our traditional blocks, it meets the definition for inner block, which you have a special review of. This property, as far as the findings and fact and conclusions, we look at the exact same things that we did in the previous subdivision that we just talked about. They've also have to provide their water availability requirement. And as you can look down the list, they have everything on their list, but they've got to get us their water requirement. Their engineers are working on that. So that's one of the conditions that you will see listed. This is in the downtown area. That's the reason for the special review. And that's what that next little map shows. This is within a half-mile radius from one of the local parks, which is Cattle Corral, 2 neighborhood parks, Uptown Park and Brayward Park, and 1 regional park, which is Von Bear Park. And the parks, open space and urban trails map does not call for a park or trail in or adjacent to this development. The transportation plan shows that the area of 300 East is a local road without limited access. And then again, we would need the water requirements. They don't have anything red other than the water requirements. So the conditions are to provide the water availability requirements, to address any comments from other staff members, if any. And again, Aaron's comments mostly deal with what's going to happen at the actual house site plans. And so they're aware of that. And then one other thing, there will be some improvement on 300 East, but they need to work with Public Works and our engineering and just to decide exactly how they want to do that. And that will happen through the final plat and the construction plan stage. The applicant will continue to meet all relevant federal, state, county, and Providence City rules, laws, codes, ordinances, approval of by the city of any application or paperwork submitted does not alleviate the responsibility or the owners and or their agents from their responsibility to understand and conform to local, state, and federal laws. Providence City's approval is not intended to and cannot be construed to allow any law to be violated. So the point we're at with this preliminary plat, one of the things that I might note that's a little bit different about this one, it does have some, the irrigation companies, both irrigation companies actually impact, and the city through secondary water. This is the line that's in here is part of the exchange that we do with Blacksmith Fork and Spring Creek. And the owners are well aware of that. The irrigation companies are aware of it. They've met, they've identified, they're identifying an easement for that line. So they have met their obligations in that respect as well. And then you can see Aaron's letter is included along with the proposed preliminary plat.
Any questions for Scarlett?
Their access to that lot too is an easement. Is that correct? Is that
Yeah.
what it's going to be? Not actually flagging it, because both will service off of that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, who do we have here to talk about this? We want to finally.
So yeah, I'm Cody Bland. I don't really have anything more to add at this time, but are there any questions you have?
Okay, anybody have questions? You're the developer?
Yeah, we're the owners
Okay.
there.
And you'll sell one of the lots and build your home on
Keep one, yeah. Try to help finance it a little bit.
Yeah, good plan. Not everybody has that
I
opportunity.
know, yeah.
Will this add to the city of Providence?
It's as was discussed with some of the other developments, and with us personally, the affordability of the smaller lot would be beneficial to someone trying to move into Providence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your house will be the one behind?
We're planning on the one in the front right now.
Do you consider one lot better than the other lot?
I think they both have benefits. The back lot is significantly more level, which is just better for a yard. The front lot is a little higher, so it has a bit of a view, but it'll be blocked partially by that back house anyway. So it just kind of, I think they both have value.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Anything? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that the planning commission will consider the action taken on after a special review for preliminary plat, hillside meadow subdivision, and proposed 2-lot residential subdivision located in general area 59 South, 300 East, to include the findings of fact, conclusions, and the conditions.
We have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion on the table by Robert Perry, a second by Roland Cecil. Any questions? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Opposed by Brian Marble. Okay, so the motion carries. Okay, we will look at item number 7. No, item number 8. Final plat approval. Only 20 more to go. Final plat approval for Fox Hollow Townhomes Phase 1. Planning Commission will consider and may take action on a request for approval of a final plat for Fox Hollow Townhomes Phase 1, a proposed 33-unit residential townhome development located in the general area of 590 West, 300 South. This is the low property out there on the way to the highway, next to the Barlows. So, Scarlett?
Okay, this one a little bit different than the previous ones because this is a multifamily development. You've actually seen this one from the get-go. You've been involved with the concept and the preliminary. However, one of the things you'll notice about the final plat is that it is only showing phase 1. So when you get down to the final plat and you're thinking, whoa, this is only half of what we've been seeing, that's correct. It is only phase 1 at final plat stage. And then when they get ready, they'll come in with the south half and show us what phase 2 is going to look like. These packets are long because the code in the multifamily asks that you get to see the buildings and the detail that direction. And so that's all been included in your packet. As far as the review goes, the items within the review are consistent with the preliminary plat and the concept plan that we have talked about in the findings of facts, conclusions, and I don't know. It's just not my night to deal with this electronic business. I get to Aaron Walker's letter and then it just resets. Okay, so conclusions.
Come around and look at the TV over here.
We can give you one of our iPads.
No, there's an extra iPad.
I actually have it now. As you can see, going down the final plat checklist, there is one item that is in red, and that is the Providence City Engineer will provide the lot addresses for the development. And so he will take care of that. One thing about this development that is a little bit different than the others, this one will have a development agreement that will go to the city council. Because as you can see on page 3 of 6, item number 9, they have some offsite improvements that are required as part of the annexation agreement. The city will be providing the pipe. They will be piping the irrigation line that runs along the south side of 300 South. And then, so the city's providing the pipe, and then the developers providing a walkable area over the top of that. They're providing sidewalk in front of their development. They won't be providing sidewalk at this point, but they will be making a walkable area there. So the conclusions, Providence City has enacted ordinances for land use regulations. They've enacted ordinance requiring that a subdivision plat comply with provisions of the municipality's ordinances and Utah code. The proposed final plat is consistent with the general plan and development in the surrounding areas. Excuse me. The framework map shows this area is near a city core. That is a 5 to 10 minute mixed use node. Yeah, 5 to 10 minute mixed use node, which means the average person could get to the commercial type stuff within 5 to 10 minutes walking. You can see on the next illustration where this development is in regards to our park coverage. It also shows that the proposed shared pathways on 300 South for bikes. It talks about that as part of the excuse me, transportation plan and shows the typical street cross sections required. It identifies 300 South as a limited access road, and they do not have multiple accesses. I think there's two, one on the east and one on the west, to accommodate their more than 30 units. And then the applicant states the following: 49 feet of asphalt will only accommodate one 5-foot bike lane. The proposed bike lane will be painted on the north side of 300 South to align with pedestrian crossing with 300 South and State Road or Highway 165. They do need to finish up with their water availability requirements. They've provided the information for the multifamily residential development. They need to provide just the information in red, which our engineer will get with them on addressing. It shows that they will, one of the conditions is that they will meet the requirements in the annexation agreement, and this development will be built into phases. The final plat for this is the final plat for phase 1. And I'm sorry, that's not a condition, that's a conclusion, is that they're meeting the requirements of the annexation agreement. So the conditions are that they'll provide the water availability requirement, and that the city council will review the development agreement. They need to address the conditions in red. The construction drawings need to be approved and signed by the city engineer. And then again, our standard that the applicant will continue to meet all of the rules. Approval by the city of any application or paperwork submitted does not alleviate the applicant or the owners or their agents from their responsibility to understand and conform to the local, state, and federal laws. Providence City's approval is not intended to and cannot be construed to allow any laws to be violated. One thing on this particular submittal, if you notice on the agenda item, there's the analysis and then there's the revised plat. As far as the design of the buildings and everything, that all remains the same. However, you will notice on this revised plat, the road that's on the west side of the development, instead of kind of going straight back into phase 2, makes a curve towards the east, a slight curve. That's the construction drawings are still being evaluated, so that will make sure everything matches up there. But at this point in time, as long as they meet the conditions that are listed, and on this one, that still means that they have to go through the development agreement approval process with the city council. Their construction drawings still need to be approved, bonding, performance security, that type of thing. So they've got a few more steps before they are ready to record, but they're definitely on the home stretch. Okay, any questions for Scarlett?
I noticed it was close to Little Ballard Creek, so Army Corps was not coming to play on this.
That is not actually designated as a wetland area. So yeah. One thing, just kind of off topic, but on the agenda, the next item, I am the applicant.
I'll take it.
So Ryan will be doing the review, and Diane prepared it. So I am a true applicant on the next item. Okay. Just want to do your bit.
Dan Tushton, Ironwood Construction, as always, Scarlett did a great job of reviewing all that. I don't have very many comments other than a couple of tweaks. We adjusted that road so that we didn't have such a straight bowling alley into the back property for phase 2. Slows down traffic, causes it not to look so long and deep. It's just a minor adjustment. And the other comment was Army Corps of Engineers has been consulted on this. There's a little bit of wetlands, but it's less than 1/10 of an acre, and so it can be negative. So, thank you. Any questions for me?
You and I need to talk about the irrigation.
You say that every time I come in.
I know.
You and I need to talk.
Call me.
Okay.
Question I have is how many extra parking spaces are there? I know
Extra,
there's some designated area, I guess, for guest parking.
yeah, there are, and I believe there's,
Phase one.
can't remember how many extra there are above the requirement, but I think there's 5 above the city requirement.
Thank you.
It has 2 car underneath.
Two
Right.
car in every unit.
And then there's an extra requirement for additional parking, and that's where the 5 come in.
Yeah, I believe it's 20, I think it's 0.25 per unit, and we have 5 extra beyond that.
Okay.
That's all I did. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anything else? I'll entertain a motion then.
I propose that we approve the final plat for Foxhall Town Homes Phase 1. Approximately 590 west, 300 south. In keeping with the and in keeping with the findings of fact, the conclusions of law, and the conditions as presented to us by staff.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Motion by Brian Marble, second by Rowan Cecil. Additional comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we now have a preliminary plat for South Bench Estates subdivision. Ryan will present. Oh, we're gonna make you stand up at the mic.
Now I have to unplug all my computer. And I'm happy to if you want me to. So this is a 2-lot subdivision proposed in the just south of 1000 South and on 400 East. The finding of facts are very similar to others that are 2-lot. We have reviewed the transportation master plan, the general plan, the park trail and recreation master plan. And you'll see on this one, we have a great applicant that has gone through the code and gone through each item to be able to check mark. So we would show this as an example. Yes, Diane, no, Diane checked it, but you'll see that the applicant fulfilled each of the items. And we're very happy when our applicants do that, and very astute. Only to you. I'm just sucking up to you. Just trying to give an example. So anyway, we come down to the conditions of conditions. Providence City has enacted ordinances requiring that a subdivision plat comply with the provisions of the municipality's ordinances and the provisions of Utah Code Title 10, Chapter 9A, Section 6. The general plan and master plans, the proposed preliminary plat is consistent with the general plan and the developments in the area. The general plan framework, the county parcel and zoning viewer has the habitat areas and sensitive areas, and there's no important habitat areas or agricultural protection areas shown in that location. The parks, trail and recreation, there was a regional park in Zollinger Park and Vons River Park a mile away, and different. It will list the other parks in their designations. The transportation master plan does identify the 400 East as a minor collector. The width of that can be a little larger, as you'll see. So a minor collector is the 66-foot right of way, and we have that already. So that's already been dedicated. And there weren't any red comments, but if there were, the applicant would need to fulfill those. So as always, the applicant will continue to meet all relevant federal, state, county, and Providence City rules, laws, codes, and ordinances. Approval by the city of any application or paperwork submitted does not alleviate the owner and or their agent from their responsibility to understand and conform to the law, local, state, and federal laws. Province approval is not intended and cannot be construed to allow any laws to be violated. And so we have the typical sections. We have the fire department's approval of it and fits there. So, and this is the picture of the subdivision. So you'll see that it is splitting here to add a lot to the south. And there's an existing home here, and it's these two that kind of horseshoe around another lot. But it's these two that are being split along this line.
So the access is for that house is going to be on the south.
Yep, they'll come along the south and have a hammerhead as required. So anyway, are there any questions for me?
What kind of traffic is this going to put out on 400 East and possibly? It's,
How many cars do they have?
Do you want to count the power wheels of the grandkids?
Are they plastic or rubber?
We don't expect any significant amount of traffic coming onto the road.
That will then go out onto 10 cars. Or 10.
Adding one house. So.
Good job. Okay, any questions?
These are view lots.
Is the developer
This is a
here?
view lot. They sit on the edge of the bluff.
You sit on the edge. That's plat. You can see the west side, and this is an amended plat. By the way, I mean, this is already part of a South Bench subdivision, so we're amending lot 3. But as you can see, the gray area on the west side of those lots is sensitive. And so we do get to deal with that. But there still are buildable envelopes. You can see the 30-foot setback line shown there. So my son thinks he needs to sit his house there.
He needs to live next to you.
Until he moves away, and then we get to meet new people.
So is that a slope problem? A sensitive area?
Yeah, it would be a slope problem, but we acknowledge it and show it.
Right.
We'll work around it with the ordinance.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion then.
I'll make a motion that we approve the preliminary plat for South Bench Estate subdivision, a proposed 2-lot residential subdivision located at 1039 South, 400 East, subject to the findings of fact, conclusions of law and conditions as set forth in the statute.
Thank you. Got a motion by Michael Fortune, a second by Roland Cecil. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
We do a second one, just aye. That was me. Started.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, item number 10, cruising right through here. Preliminary plat for Providence Springs 55 plus cluster development. The Planning Commission will consider and may take action on a request for approval of a preliminary plat for the Providence Springs 55 plus cluster development and 31 lot residential development located in the general area of 300 north and 100 east. So Scarlett, if you would come back up now and
Kind of run the gamut tonight. We've had regular subdivisions, we've had multifamily, special review, and now cluster.
And the cluster is a new one for me.
Yeah, yes, but we did hold a special hearing on this one, if you remember, during the concept plan stage, so you've seen this one. We are at the preliminary plat stage. Jody Robbins, as developer, is here. Again, the findings of fact, we consider, we look at state code, We look at the general plan, the master plans, the water availability requirement. We look at the preliminary plat requirements. If you scroll down that list, I have to commend Jody. A couple of weeks ago, he did have some red marks on there and he put his pencil down and got to work. And so he's provided all of the information that we need at this point. So Providence City is the conclusions. Providence City has enacted the ordinances requiring that a subdivision plat comply with the provisions of the municipality's ordinances and the provisions of Utah Code Title 10, Chapter 9A, Section 6. One thing I might note, as this was a cluster and did go through the special review, you did adjust the road widths, and he is building to the road widths. He's made sure that his turnaround on the north and west side of the property is adequate for the fire marshal. So he has he will continue to meet the requirements that came out of your special review process. Back to our conclusions. The framework map indicates this parcel is within a neighborhood residential development area. The parks, trails, and recreation, our parks, open space, and urban trails map does not call for a trail in or adjacent to the development area. The transportation map shows this area of 100 East as a minor collector without limited access. It is an existing road. The water availability, you can see his requirement there will be a total of 32.34 acre feet. He does not have any comments in red at this point in time. I wondered why that note was in red and we haven't seen that on any. Probably because they used to all be in red, and then I went through and blacked them all out, and I must have missed this one when I was doing it.
Nothing significant.
No. If there are additional comments from other staff members through the course of the next step, you would need to address those as well. He will continue to meet all relevant federal, state, county, and Providence City rules, laws, codes, ordinances. Approval by the city of any application or paperwork submitted does not alleviate the owners and or their agents from their responsibility to understand and conform to local, state, and federal laws. Providence City's approval is not intended to and cannot be construed to allow any laws to be violated. The plat that, did I not attach the plat? Or is my phone just not bringing it up?
No, it's not there.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
There is a blank page after that.
So I don't know why it's not loading.
Ryan, can you get it?
Page 5.
Show it on the screen.
Why it's not?
I think it's just not loading.
Well,
Brian's trying to bring it up here.
I will forward one to I'll forward one to you, Ryan, that you can bring. You can make sure, yeah, it should come up on it.
Hi, do you remember seeing that when you were putting it together? It's Ryan's computer because he's
Okay, Ryan. just forwarded in another email. It's got 2 attachments to it. One of them is just, it talks about his request dealing with the cluster development. And then he also provides his water calculations. And the other one is the actual plat. And you've got,
Yeah. So I think it's just not loading here.
okay. And Jody is in the audience if you have any questions for him. And while that's loading, do you have any, one thing, they are developing it all in one phase. So the other thing, they're not putting basements. They know that it's in a high groundwater area. And so they're not even going to try and mitigate that. They're just slab on grade. Thank you.
Thank you, Scarlett. Have any questions?
Development? Jody, right?
Oh, there it is.
Jody Robbins.
Okay.
Been
Jody,
here before.
and you've answered some of these questions before too, but keep us going here. This will be an HOA?
Correct.
Okay. And the additional, and how much is the HOA going to take care of? Are they going to be taking care of all the roads as well as the sidewalks?
That's correct. They're going to be doing the snow removal for the roads, the sidewalks, and also lawn mowing.
Front and back, so the work.
Front and back.
Okay. And do you have an average size of the lot? Yes.
My guess would be somewhere around 7,500 to 8,000.
Thanks.
They all sold out.
We're actually not selling lots yet because we want you guys to approve before we start selling something
You don't have to don't really have to renege.
doesn't exist, but we do have a waiting list that is longer than our number of lots. So, we don't anticipate that everybody on that waiting list will take a lot.
And anybody under 55 is not eligible.
People under 55 are not eligible. We've had a couple of calls, people that are 54, and if they're 54 now, by the time the house is built, they'll be 55. So
Nobody's anxious to be 55.
no.
This
Well, those of us that are over that are anxious for that.
I do have a question. You have a card?
I do.
I haven't really answered because I'm well over 55.
I will leave a card with you.
Thank you.
the CCNR, are they going to allow 2 stories or just single story?
We haven't set that yet, but we're planning on single story with bonus room space in the roof pitches. Yeah, so it will be more bonus rooms. So some houses will have a second story, but it will be a bonus room up in that roof space with gables.
So you'd expect to see 3-bedroom and 2-bath, 2-bedroom, 2-bath.
We have a website that I would invite you all to check out because it has lots of our floor plans. It doesn't have this one. It has a previous rendition of this one, but most of our floor plans are, our smallest one is 2-bedroom, 2-bath. Our biggest one is 4-bedroom, 2-bath with a loft up in the bonus room area.
And your website is?
ProvidenceSprings55.com.
Okay, any other questions? So somebody that is over 55 buys one of these units and rents it to somebody under the age, is that going to be addressed in your CCNRs?
That will be more so addressed in the HOA bylaws.
Okay.
So it will be the HOA group that has control over that, which is us to start with, but then we turn it over to residents of the development.
Would you get it running?
So does that allow the residents to
to change the 55 and allow people younger?
I don't have that answer.
Well,
I would
It's a
imagine
thought.
I would imagine we can add verbiage within the bylaws that make it so they can't change it. I also find it very unlikely that as a group, they would choose to allow.
They usually don't, but cobblestone has run into the problem and they don't know how to get the people out.
Yes, so
That's why I'm asking about it.
that's a really good note. We'll make sure to add that into the HOA bylaws.
But can't the HOA people change that?
I don't have that information at the moment.
Well, Joe might.
My dad was president of this 55 plus HOA, and when I was looking for a house, they said they could make an exception to get me in there. I said, I don't think that would be a great move for my social life.
Well, you aren't that bad.
No, you're not. I wasn't.
It's good to get.
You know, you don't want me to bring the party back unless you're invited.
Well, he's 90 now, so.
But it sounded like that they thought they could do it. Like, I think that when the HOA has control of the board, they can do whatever they want.
Well,
True, Joe.
yeah, but there are HOA laws, state laws.
No,
The covenants, if it's not in the CCNRs, and it's just left up to the bylaws, they can change
Your
it.
answer.
It has to be in the CCNRs.
I'll make sure to add it
It has
into
to
the
have a
CCNR.
supermajority to prevent them from doing it.
We've worked heavily with the Mountain View HOA Association, just surrounding, that surrounds this property. Just because we're kind of working together on a couple of solutions to some problems they have and some problems we have. And most of the stuff that we've had to do with them has required a
You're
full
okay. I'm not
majority.
living down there, so
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm just telling you what my experience has been.
I appreciate the input.
Okay. Anything else? Thanks, Joe. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. No more questions, then I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the final plat, that we approve a preliminary plat for the Providence Springs 55 plus cluster development in a general area of 300 north and 100 east in Providence, Utah, including the findings of fact, the conclusions of law, and the conditions that the staff has brought to our attention. And I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion on the table by Brian Marble to approve. We have a second by Roland Cecil. Any other further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Just minimal to there.
Yeah, we're just clicking right along.
Loving everybody.
Okay, we'll go to Kumbaya and the whole bit. Thank you.
Good luck.
Item number 11, final plat for the Bowes subdivision. The planning commission will consider and may take action on a request for approval of a final plat for the Bowes subdivision, a 3-lot residential subdivision located in the general area of 407 South, 100 West.
Findings of facts are the same as we've talked about on the other subdivisions. This one is a final plat. You have seen, this is a preliminary. We have Nick here tonight, the preliminary plat. Phaedra, sorry. Phaedra was here and asked you about the sidewalk and things. They've complied with what you asked them on the preliminary plat. At the time, we're missing just a couple of things that can be taken care of with the construction drawings the engineer cost estimates need to be turned in, and they need to add a statement. I know it's kind of seems strange because this isn't in a hazard area, but we still need to have the statement on the plat that says that all lots have an adequate buildable envelope with regards to hazard, slope, zoning, setbacks, etc. So we do have those two items in red. Providence City is in our conclusions. They've enacted the ordinances requiring that a subdivision plat comply with provisions of the municipality's ordinances and the provisions of Utah Code Title 10, Chapter 9A, 6 and 6. Under the general plan and master plans, the proposed final plat is consistent with the general plan and development in the surrounding areas. The water availability requirements, they provided those, and they're looking at probably two shares of water, but their requirement is 4.65 acre feet. The conditions are that they would address the comments in red, and they would address comments from others, if any. They actually have worked on their construction drawings. They're actually ready to be signed. So these guys are kind of ahead of the game on their construction drawings. They'll just get their bonding in place. They're working on scheduling their pre-construction meetings. So if you approve this final plat, they can move right along. So prior to recording, they have to complete the application for development and public improvement installation. The construction drawings need to be approved and signed by the city engineer, and the security of performance needs to be in place. And again, our final one, the applicant will continue to meet all relevant federal, state, county, Providence City rules, laws, codes, ordinances. Approval by the city of any application or paperwork submitted does not alleviate the owners and or their agents from their responsibility to understand and conform to local, state, and federal laws. Providence City's approval is not intended to and cannot be construed to allow any laws to be violated. So, any questions?
Did we allow that tree or disallow the tree that they were asking about? That was.
We told them they had to put the sidewalk in the right place. I'm not sure what the ultimate decision will be about the tree when the sidewalk goes in. No tree. There you go.
Okay.
Anyway, Nick is here if you'd like to ask questions. Just to tell you, I did have that situation on the farm property down here. We had a tree that they had to cut off a significant amount of root, and we have to delete the tree, and it's been fine. But
Yeah.
on the pine tree, I'm not sure that.
The tree will be right in the middle of the sidewalk. I do actually have a concern. We did get engineers to draw the stormwater infiltration basins. And after reviewing those, I don't think they were done completely correctly. And the basins that are being required are actually enormous. So for a 0.3 acre lot, one of the basins is 20 feet by 40 feet by 3 feet deep. And I have a buyer now that might bow out because he doesn't know where he can put his house on the property because the basin is so huge. And I've gone through, I've read state regulations, I've read county regulations, I've read.
This is on lot what, 3?
On all 3 lots,
Oh, on all
they're quite large. And so there's different ways to calculate the stormwater retention. One is this 80% tile of your storm event, and you calculate the amount that falls on the entire property, and you have different infiltration rates. And so when you put more impervious surfaces in there, that's going to increase your infiltration or increase your runoff. And so you have to count for that with the drainage basins. And so the engineers provided that. That was for the 0.3 acre lot, it was like 54 cubic feet. And then there's the 100-year storm event to get to deal with runoff of a 100-year storm event. And from what I've read, and I have talked to people at DEQ and USU Extension, that you have to make up the difference from what it was historically, what it will be post-construction. The way the engineers figured it out was for the entire property. And so for the 80th percentile, that storm event is just under 0.5 inches. For the 100-year storm event, it's almost 3.5 inches of rain. And it's for the entire property, the way it's calculated now, assuming no infiltration. And so these basins are designed for that 100-year event for the whole property, not the discrepancy between historic and current, or historic and post-construction. So I really I don't know how to address it because the only thing I can find in the Providence ordinance is that it says structures provided by the developer is required to adequately dispose of 100-year frequency flood flows developed within the limits of the development along with the existing flows into them. That's what's required. And so that's kind of not the most explicit language to figure this out. And
Probably. Scarlett, do you want to address that?
Well, it's kind of a tricky wicket when you have an engineer that's willing to sign their work for someone else to override it. What would happen is if when they go through the construction plans and looking at the storm water, if there is a change, then the easements for that stormwater would be shown a little bit differently. It wouldn't affect the configuration of the lots, but we're not really in the business of changing someone else's
Right. That's
engineering.
Out of our bailiwick.
Yeah.
Because none of us are engineers to be able to
I
do that.
I think there's another piece of information that our engineers didn't know about, and I talked to our engineers tonight, and we did all the calculations, and the storm infiltration basins would be 1/4 to 1/3 of the size. If so, there is it's part of the stormwater for Providence. I talked to John Hubbard, who created these maps of all the ditches and canals for all Providence. I talked to him for quite a while, and so I did take some pictures tonight of, at the corner of our lot, there is drainage that goes into a box, and that pipe goes underground for a couple blocks and then empties. And it showed up in the on this map as stormwater access to the lower Blacksmith Providence canal. And
just a point real quick, if I might. So at this body is looking at the plat, the final plat, and the easements in that. Are you proposing changes to the document that you've submitted, or are you looking for approval of it now?
it's the construction plans.
So the construction plans are the approval of the engineer. So that's not, this body's not approving the construction plans. I just wanted to let you know which body's approving which, maybe to help you. So that would be something. At that point, that's our engineer side. But this is, if you want this body to act to approve the proposed division of lots, that's what this would be about. So anyway.
We would have to put it off to another meeting if that's what you want to do. If you want to do something different than what you've shown us in this drawing.
It's none of that stuff's in the drawing. I'm just it's a concern I have because
and that's
as soon as
okay.
we approve this, then we can close. But now I have a buyer that's about to buy out because of this construction.
But that doesn't
and the
mean that you
construction
can't.
drawings become a different one, and based on whether it's your engineer or the city engineer that's giving you the issue, that could be discussed. But I just want to let you know so that you focus. If this is different and you want it different, then we probably need to come back and postpone this to come back to modify this.
It's not part of the plat.
That's
Yeah,
good.
don't go anywhere though. So you found some good things when you went to look at the stormwater. And did you find that you could eliminate or almost eliminate your need for basins? How much can you get rid of?
I mean, if we can consider that,
Except that, let me just stop you
Yeah.
right there. That's kind of a sidebar conversation. So if you wanted to, because we're not going to deal with that.
No, we're not, but it's open, it's out in the open. And I want to know if the city allows that to be taken into account. The stormwater system that is shared with the irrigation system, because I'm familiar with the irrigation system. I just want to know, does the city allow that?
Well, let me give you this one. If in the event of a storm event, and that was that, if Blacksmith Fork, I believe it's Blacksmith Fork's canal there, if they were charged, if their canal was charged during a storm event, where would the stormwater go? If it's full with the water.
When was the last time it was full?
I'm just asking if it was charged for the irrigation company and the storm event occurs, a 100-year event, which is a once in 100 years, that's a flash flood kind of event. Where does it go?
Okay.
And that becomes a question, but again, this is construction drawings and I don't want to get you too sidetracked, but I'm trying to answer your question.
Don't go too far. So
Okay.
I'm just concerned that we've got somebody who wants to do a valid 3-parcel subdivision. And they're going, so far he's looking at his map drawings. And he's not unlike anybody else that wants to do a small subdivision, that he's going to have to come up with huge catch basins. I mean, we're talking 20 or 30 or 40% of the property is going to go into catch basins. I mean, your initial big chunk. Yeah. Too much.
Or detention basins rather than the catch basin. It could be other mechanisms. We have detention basins in several spots that are
underground.
Not always underground. Some are just depressions in.
Right. I thought that's what he was talking about. Was
they're
putting those in, and they were huge compared to the lot size. They were 20, 30, 40% of the lot. And I feel for it. There's no reason, but I mean, is everybody going through that? I don't see a lot of these being built. I see a few. Okay.
But that's something that your engineer can deal. Okay. Yeah. So today, we want to get you on the road and get you so that if once we approve it, then you don't have to wait for us anymore. And you can deal with that piece of it with someone else. Because we don't want to hold you up.
Yeah. Thank you for your time. Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions that pertain to this preliminary plat that we're final plat that we're approving. Okay, I'll entertain a motion then.
I'll make a motion that we, planning commission approve the final plat of the Bowes subdivision, 3-lot residential subdivision located in the general area of 407 South and 100 West to include the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and any conditions.
Okay, we've got a motion by Robert Perry, a second by Rowan Cecil. Any other comment? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Can I make a motion that we continue the meeting? We're past 9 o'clock. We only have one more item to take care of.
Got a motion to continue the meeting?
I'll second that one. Can you actually pronounce my last name correctly?
Bowes.
What is it?
Bowes.
I worked with a gentleman whose name was Bowes, but it was Bowuwhus. And so for me to see, it looks like bows to me, but
Yeah.
your wife corrected us last time. So as much as I'd like to take credit for that, I can't. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion on the table to continue the meeting. It's after 9. A motion by Robert Perry, second by Rowan Cecil. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Not much past.
Not much passed. Okay. The item number 12 is new planning commission chair. I am going to be stepping down from the planning commission.
Madam Chairman, I move that Michael Fortune be appointed the new chairman of the planning commission for Providence City.
Okay. We have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by, that was fast.
We have an effective date on that, Mr. Cecil? We have an effective date on that? 3 years from now? 4 years from now?
Immediately.
Okay.
The last 4 years.
No.
I'm here.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table by Rowan Cecil, a second by Robert Perry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you very much, everyone.
Which means that now you can vote.
No, you're still on the phone.
Oh, well, let's keep
No,
going.
I'm resigning. I'm resigning from the
Well, I
phone.
thought you were gonna be here for the next couple of times.
So I propose that we accept the resignation of Kathleen Alder as a planning commission member, effective as of December 31st, 2021. I'm getting out of this early.
Oh, no, it's all that one.
But first of all, it wouldn't be an actionable item, and second, the resolution goes to the mayor and not the commission here. So nice try, but out of luck. Her resignation would go to the mayor, not to the commission. So she can resign as a commission, as the chair, which she did, and you appointed a new chair, which is all appropriate. But her resignation on the commission would go to the mayor and not the commission. So
Because that's who appointed her.
because that's who appointed her.
Don't resign before the end of the month, because I plan on being in Hawaii from December 17th to December 31st. I'm not coming
So I should
back.
come to another meeting.
I'm not coming to any
Okay.
other meetings you've sat in December.
Why don't we make him the chair and we'll go to. He gets to go.
Well, all right, I have one more item.
Yeah.
I would like to make a motion that we have Brian Marble serve as vice chair for the Providence Planning Commission.
I move that.
Okay, we have a motion by Michael Fortune to have Brian Marble serve as vice chair. Second by Rowan Cecil. All in favor?
Can I? Aye. The staff's not voting, are they?
Oh, you have little faith over there, Brian.
We lost our recording.
I move that we close this meeting.
We have one more thing, the date for the next meeting.
Yes, the next meeting we have a preliminary date of December 22nd. Just simply because we had some things that were coming up that we hate to hold people up on over the holidays, so.
The one after that would be January 12th.
And then we won't have one on the 12th.
We will.
Oh, we won't have one on the 8th. We'll have one on the 12th. Thank you all. It's been a pleasure to be your chair.
We have a gift for you. I'm working on it. You know, I believe Rowan was going to sing a song before you departed.
You're welcome to adjourn. We could close the meeting if you
I'll
so
make a
chose to do
motion that
so.
we adjourn this meeting.
I made that motion already.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Brian, you can go home.